Hogwarts. Big Boss in the Harry Potter world. Chapter 41. This room in the basement of the castle is Elrond's laboratory and also his bedroom. Selwyn's castle does not have good lighting like Hogwarts. Here, the underground rooms are no different from the upper rooms, and the sunlight can't come in. And Elrond may not be far away from those annoying people if he chooses here, meaning of relatives. Why is your hair so long? Elrond realized that his grandson's hair was a bit long, cut it off quickly. Clam. Does the wizarding world also have a rule that hair should not cover ears? Grandpa, I've never had long hair. Try it and I'll cut it later. Solemn tried to save his hair. What long hair do you have? It's so sloppy, whether it's preparing potions or fighting, long hair on your head is too much of a hindrance. Cut it off. As he spoke, he touched his body size. Look at my hair, how energetic it is. It's also easy to take care of, and you can get a body size that is the same as Grandpa's later. In my previous life, I was sloppy for decades, but in this life, will I still be sloppy? Absolutely. Right. No. Want. Even if I, Solemn, die. Even if I am bald, I will definitely not have a cut. Solemn said viciously in his heart. Solemn decides to fight against his grandfather for his hair, but well, he still needs to talk about a little strategy, and it's definitely not okay to come directly. Grandpa, look, I'm back now, won't you tell me about my sister? Solemn decided to change the subject first. I actually found one. It's a coincidence. You know which family usually has a squib. It's not hidden tightly for fear that others will find out. It's not easy for me to ask around. Elrond took Solemn made his way to the inner room. I'm too lazy to tell you about the process. A boy from the Orvis family, who is the same age as Cerna, is in the same situation. Elrond opened a big book from his workbench. He turned to one of the pages, and said to the page, quickly reply to me. Seeing Solemn staring at the book, Elrond said, don't even think about it, you'll have a few years to live with this thing. Solemn sighed and nodded helplessly. This book has the same function as the double-sided mirror, and it is also used to connect with other people, but it is much more advanced than the double-sided mirror. Two-way mirrors can only be one-to-one, and only a matching pair of two-way mirrors can communicate. In this book, it can be connected with all the people who own this book, just add each other's moving images in each other's books. However, it also relies on the consumption of mana to communicate, which Solemn can't afford right now. Tell me, how is your life at Hogwarts? Elrond sat casually on the armchair in front of the workbench. You don't need to think about it to know that Biscool is better. Solemn also found a place to sit down. HMPH, if you hadn't messed around with yourself, what would you be like now? Elrond had a lot of opinions on Solemn's leaving Skylar. In his opinion, if Solemn has been receiving education in Skylar, then he will definitely become a great wizard in the future. Elrond firmly believes in this. Little wizards are also rare, and more little wizards will have magic riots at the age of 6 to 7. I really can't stand it. The Cruciatus curse and the Imperius curse are fine. After all, they are really good for me, so I can bear it. Solemn sneered, but since they left me a mark, then I have to return it. Let's go back. Oh, I heard that they plan to attack you as soon as you graduate from Hogwarts. You should work harder. Elrond hesitated. If you need anything, remember to tell me. Speaking of which, Grandpa, I really have something to trouble you. Solemn straightened up and looked at Elrond seriously. Just this holiday, Grandpa, you are going to a place with me, to be precise, it is you take me somewhere. Elrond looked at Solemn. Little Hangleton, there's something I have to get. Solemn said seriously. It couldn't be less serious. It wasn't just the Resurrection Stone, it was Voldemort's Horcrux, the Horcrux that had caused Dumbledore's death. As mentioned earlier, Elrond is a curse breaker, and for the curse that Voldemort cast on the Resurrection Stone, this happens to be his professional counterpart. Although Solemn said that he came back this time because of Cerna's affairs, it is better to complete the promise to Snape earlier. You know, Elrond will not be in the castle after March, and he will fulfill his promise. Duty, and Solemn couldn't reach him then. Old man, where are you? Elrond and Solemn looked at the workbench at the same time, and the book spoke. HMPH, you're so fast. I was a child when I found you, and now I have grandchildren. Elrond stood up, turned and looked at the portrait on the page and said, "Speaking of your grandson, didn't you say he's coming back today? How's it going? How's it going? Come, Solemn, come and say hello." Elrond beckoned Solemn over. "Look, here is my proud grandson, Solemn." Elrond stood up the whole book so they would not have to bow their heads. "HMPH, I've heard of his brilliant deeds. Tell me, kid, how sure are you?" asked the person on the page. "You old, why are you in such a hurry?" Elrond turned to Solemn and said, "This old foe is called Gilvez, and his grandson's situation is the same as that of Silna. He's here to ask for your help." Elrond put emphasis on the word, beg. "Fart. You old fool, if this kid can really solve the problem of little Fletcher, I will treat him badly. You don't have to be so eccentric." The old man Solemn on the page understood it, and he was the same type as his grandpa. Or how can we say that like attracts like? "Boy, you talk." Solemn hesitated what to call the old man in front of him. "Don't worry, he won't care what you call him, as long as you explain the matter clearly." Elrond could see that Solemn was hesitating. "Well, Filch, he sort of made it. Filch is the one. I know who he is. Aravito's grandson, the squib who was expelled from the family." Gilvez interrupted Solemn roughly. "Tell me about his condition now, can he cast spells?" "I don't know, he is now." "I don't know. Then you dare to say, it's a success." Gilvez interrupted Solemn again. "Old man, listen to him first. If you interrupt my grandson again, I will interrupt you." Elrond threatened from the side. Seeing that the two were about to quarrel, Solemn quickly spit out the words, "He doesn't have a wand yet, so I'm not sure if he can cast standard spells. But he can indeed use magic power, which I can. Both Professor Snape and I can be sure." Solemn ended up taking Snape's name, so he could blame him if anything went wrong. "When you and this old man come over, don't forget to bring your observation records. Old man, I have something to deal with now, and you and this kid will come to my place tomorrow, so it's settled." Elrond responded, and Gilvez unilaterally terminated the connection. "This old guy. You heard it too, we'll be there tomorrow afternoon. Bring your things." Elrond closed the book angrily. "By the way, you should have notified your sister when you came, right? Go find her, I guess those idiot sons of Keldor blocked her, you know how to deal with it." Elrond estimated he sensed something and said such a sentence to Solemn. Without another word, Solemn turned and left. "Since you're back, take this thing with you." Elrond threw an object over. Solemn caught it and pinned it to his skirt without looking at it. With this, most of the magic prohibition in the castle does not need to find house elves. Keldor is Solim's uncle. His father is Breed, Elrond's second brother. He also has 3 sons, Adelaide, Wright, and Redham. Among these cousins, only Redham is still friendly. He often persuades his eldest brother and second brother not to bully Solemn, but he himself is often the target of bullying. As for other peers, Solemn is too lazy to remember their names. When Solemn came out of the dark basement to the ground hall, what he saw made him pull out his wand. "Didn't that brother of yours say he's coming back today? What? Didn't he abandon you too? Huh? Talk, you little squib." Adelaide's sharp-mouthed monkey cheeks and face composed of facial features make people look at just knew it wasn't fun. "Brother. That's enough, if she tells her grandpa we're all doomed." Redham said words that he himself knew wouldn't work. "Which side are you from?" "Just her good-for-nothing grandpa. If she has a grandpa, don't we have a grandpa?" Adelaide raised his head and looked at Ledham, who was about to teach his younger brother a lesson, but happened to see Solemn walked over with his wand. "Oh, it's been a long time, little fool." Adelaide and Wright also pulled out their wands, and Lightham pulled up Selna who was sitting on the ground and walked aside silently. He knew what was going to happen next. "What happens? I won't accept your apology, but I will accept your tears." Solemn knew that the younger generation can fight with each other, but it must not cause serious harm, and it can only make the brat in front of him cry, let him have a long memory. Ugly boy, what a difficult creature to deal with. Very destructive, very vengeful. But now it's all right. According to his age, Solemn is also the age of a bear kid. He can do it without any scruples, and no one will come to him and say, "Oh, how old are you, why are you still dating a man? Children are fussy, don't lose face." Or, "Children are ignorant, don't you, an adult, also be ignorant. And other heart-warming words. But now, thanks to age, no one will say that to Solemn anymore. Solemn was free to clean up these dead things. I thought you would have a longer memory, but it seems that I overestimated you. Your brain seems to be not working very well. Solemn was ready, he knew that the next words would start the battle. Could it be were you born of your father and the troll? Without warning, Adelaide and Wright shot together. Solemn had already prepared for this. In his opinion, that sentence was a test of all times, and every time he said this sentence, he would start fighting. Okay, they're fighting again, Redham said to Selna on the side. Go to your grandfather first, you know, your brother will be fine. Serna nodded without saying anything, glanced at Solemn who had just finished Wright with a petrification spell, turned and walked to the basement. Adelaide is crawling, or wriggling, on the ground. He is bound by the binding spell, and his arms and legs cannot move. Solemn stepped on Adelaide's pointed his wand at his back. Aren't you always curious about the scars on my back? How about I get one for you too? When Solemn came back, he saw Elrond fiddling with his workbench, and Serna was sitting on the side reading a book. It's over. Same as usual. It was obvious that both the grandson and the grandson didn't take what happened just now to their hearts. Elrond clearly knew how capable his grandson was, and little wizards like Adelaide and Wright would not be Solim's opponents at all, and this has happened many times. Sometimes even when the little ones were fighting, the adult wizards watching would open their mouths. How are you doing, my lovely sister? Solemn greeted Serna. As usual, the only entertainment is reading. Selna replied to Solemn without looking up. Elrond and Solemn exchanged glances. Then brother told you some good news, how about it? Solemn went to his sister and closed the book in her hand. Solemn noticed that she was reading, The Tales of Beetle the Poet. Oh. What? I'm smothered. I hope it's good news. Serna looked up at Solemn. Taking a breath, Solemn said slowly to Serna. Serna is going to become a wizard, what's the news? Silna froze for a moment, seeing that Solemn did not speak, she knew that her brother would not make fun of her. Solemn saw that his sister didn't speak, so he could only continue. Now there are some potions that can help Serna become a wizard. If there is no accident, you will be able to go to school next year. How are you happy? Serna looked past her brother to her grandfather, hoping to get his confirmation. That's right, little Nana will be able to go to school in Skylar next year. Elrond responded with a smile. Solemn turned around and looked at his grandfather in disbelief. You want to send Silna to that crappy place? And she's already 10 years old. Skylar doesn't accept little wizards who are older than 7 years old. Quote. Glancing at Solemn, Elrond said in dissatisfaction, what are you calling out? The age limit is only for men, and Silna is a girl, so there is no age limit, as long as she is under 11 years old. You don't even know this after studying for many years. No. Grandpa, you know exactly what kind of place Skull is. Do you think Silna can adapt to that kind of place? Solemn strongly objected to sending his sister to that ghostly place like Skull. And what the hell is the age limit? How come I didn't know it after all those years of schooling? How do I know why you don't? This is common sense. Besides, Silna is from the Selwyn family, so she can only go to Skull. Elrond was unmoved. Grandpa, you know what I've been through. I managed to escape from there with great difficulty. Solim's voice became smaller and smaller. Looking at the corner of his grandfather's upturned mouth, he suddenly realized something. HMPH, or did you say it was missed? It's hard, try to escape, right? Elrond folded his arms and asked Solemn with a smile. So you didn't bite to death, did you? Is it because of your impulsiveness, what? Finally said what's in your heart. You bad old man is bad and ruthless. Closing his eyes and taking a few breaths, Solemn opened his eyes and looked at his grandfather. So those nonsense about age restrictions are all false. No, that's true. Think about it for yourself. Have you ever seen girls your age when you were in school in Skylar? The senior female students you met were all in other schools before. You will be taught at a place where you will be taught at a certain age, and you will not be able to attend classes with male wizards until you are a certain age. Have you never noticed that there are no girls of the same age around you? When he said the last sentence, Elrond had a very strange expression. After seeing Solim's expression, Elrond was convinced that his grandson really didn't notice this problem. "Oh my god," he said while smacking his lips. "Tisk tisk tisk. I really care for you, worry about the future. Spare me." Solim groaned inwardly. Who has the time to pay attention to whether there are girls around in Sigul's environment? Serna smiled and watched her grandfather and brother bickering. She likes to see such a scene very much. After all, such a warm scene will only appear on these two people in front of her in the entire gloomy and depressing castle. Okay, old man. Don't be kidding. Silna must go to Hogwarts. If it doesn't work, go to Bobaton's. Don't think about Durmstrang. Of course it's Hogwarts, what's the point? Elrond gave Solim a blank look, and continued, "It's getting late, let's go up to dinner." The three of them, grandparents and grandchildren, usually eat in a small restaurant when they eat, and they don't sit with other relatives. After all, they don't like each other very much, and they don't see each other as soon as they can. Elrond took the lead and walked in front, while Solim talked with his sister behind. "I just saw you reading The Tales of Beedle the Poet. I remember that you have read it several times. It's not that there are no other books to read. Is there anything in that book that attracts you? Brother, did you read that book when you were young?" Selna asked Solim back. "Of course I saw it, what's the matter? Don't you think the story of the three brothers is very interesting? The story of the three brothers can be said to be known to all wizards. After all, The Tales of Beedle the Poet can be regarded as an enlightenment book for the wizarding world. Of course Solim knows he knew it in his previous life. I will not write the specific content of the story, I will post it to the work when the time comes." "Oh. Tell me, Serna, where do you think it's intentional?" Solim talked to Serna at random. "Look brother, the eldest got the wand, he was killed, the second got the resurrection stone, he committed suicide, the third got the invisibility cloak, he died. Look, how interesting, man, several ways of death are represented by these three items. You said that if a person got both the wand and the resurrection stone, how would he die?" Sierna asked Solim a question. Huh. What? Solim had just heard about the resurrection stone, and couldn't help thinking that he and his grandfather were going to touch that dangerous Horcrux in a few days, so he couldn't help being a little distracted. "Really, I'll say it again, you have to listen carefully." Serna repeated what she just said. Looking at his sister who was a little unhappy, Solim had to listen obediently, but as he listened, Solim's face changed, as if he heard something terrible from his sister's words. The term Deathly Hallows is no stranger to Solim. The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Invisibility Cloak are the legendary Three Hallows. Let's not discuss their functions first. Let's see who owns them first. The Elder Wand, the legendary wand that can make its master invincible, is now in Dumbledore's hands. The Resurrection Stone, which is said to be able to resurrect the dead, was made into a Horcrux by Voldemort, and was later also in Dumbledore's hands. The Invisibility Cloak, which is said to allow users to avoid the gaze of death, will be handed over to Harry Potter by Dumbledore during this Christmas holiday. So according to Silna, it is also what the story tells us. The one who owned the Elder Wand was killed. Dumbledore had the Elder Wand, and Grindelwald and the wand maker Grigorovich of Day also had over the Elder Wand. Wouldn't they end up being killed? Dumbledore was killed by Snape, Grindelwald and Grigorovich were killed by Voldemort, but Solim didn't know whether Draco and Harry, who also had the Elder Wand, were killed in the end. The Resurrection Stone, the owner of this thing will eventually kill himself. Except for the examples in the story, the people who once owned the Resurrection Stone in reality, except for Voldemort and Dumbledore, Solim really didn't know what happened to the others. Then let's take a look at what happened to these two people. Dumbledore was indeed killed by Snape, but he was killed voluntarily. If the fate of holding the Elder Wand is to be killed, and the fate of holding the Resurrection Stone is suicide, then Dumbledore's death method is completely in line with this inference. The fate of holding these two items at the same time is to be voluntarily killed. And then, Voldemort, he's only ever owned the Philosopher's Stone, the Elder Wand doesn't count, he's not the real owner of the Elder Wand. What is his final fate? Not to mention that the Horcrux is originally a slow suicide. In the final decisive battle, since the real owner of the Elder Wand was Harry Potter, Harry also used the disarming curse when using the killing curse, which caused the Elder Wand to return the killing curse to Voldemort. The curse of fate killed him, Isn't that suicide? Thinking of this, Solemn couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. These inferences are not afraid of being false, but of being true. You know, in a few days he and Elrond will have the idea of playing the Resurrection Stone. If these things are true. Brother. You're deserting again, are you listening to me? Hey. Cerna stomped Solemn hard. It was a kick that brought Solemn back to his senses. About your question, I think, willing to be killed. Maybe. Solemn said slowly, word by word. Brother, what's wrong with you? You were a little absent-minded when I was talking just now. It's nothing. Do you have any interesting points about this story? Solemn asked his sister. Now he really lifted his spirits and was ready to listen to his sister carefully. Yes, you see, the wand makes people kill, the stone makes people commit suicide, and the clothes make people die naturally. It seems that they are all related to death. But thinking about it the other way around, people who have wands can only be killed, and people who have stones can only die. Suicide, and those who have the invisibility cloak can only die, isn't it interesting to think so? Solemn slowly repeated Cerna's words, chewing on the meaning. If the Elder Wand represents homicide, the Resurrection Stone represents suicide, and the invisibility cloak represents natural death. So does it mean that when you have one of them, you rule out the other two ways to die? For example, with the Elder Wand, this person can only be killed, he cannot commit suicide, and he will not die naturally. How can this be? Don't die of old age with the Elder Wand. What kind of joke is this? If the inference is true, it really cannot prove whether you will die of old age, because you will be killed first, and besides, suicide, as long as you really make up your mind to die, you can still die. Is there anyone who can't die? Could it be that with the Resurrection Stone, you can only commit suicide? Can someone give you an Avada and not kill you? Or is it possible to live forever with the Resurrection Stone? Thinking of this, Solemn couldn't help laughing at his previous thoughts. He preferred to believe that the way Dumbledore and Voldemort died was a coincidence rather than the Deathly Hallows. Solemn is eating now, he just moves the food to his mouth mechanically, and then swallows mechanically. His mind is not on eating at all right now. Cerna's last words to Solemn before serving the table were, "What if I had 3 at the same time?" According to legend, possessing 3 Deathly Hallows at the same time will become the master of the god of death. The specific source of this legend is no longer available. If Solemn's previous conjectures about the Deathly Hallows were correct, the legend might be true. Owning 1 Deathly Hallows will rule out 2 ways of death, so does owning all 3 Deathly Hallows mean that the owner has ruled out the possibility of homicide, suicide and natural death? If you think about it carefully, it seems that life is just these 3 ways of dying. Solemn wasn't sure if his conjecture was true, but considering that Dumbledore and Grindelwald had frantically searched for the Deathly Hallows, it didn't seem too far-fetched. Solemn decided to think about this issue after eating. If his conjecture was true, then Solemn would not even want to see the Resurrection Stone, but in this way, the promise to Snape would be a bit troublesome. Now Solemn's head is a bit big, and he didn't expect Cerna's words to make the problem so complicated. Thinking of this, Solemn glanced at his sister. It is a story that every wizard has read as a child, even Solemn, but no one has ever paid attention to these things hidden in this story. No, maybe not all of them, at least Dumbledore and Grindelwald tried to find them, and Dumbledore had access to all the Hallows, he just didn't have them all at the same time. Dumbledore will give the invisibility cloak to Potter during this holiday. Originally, he had 2 Deathly Hallows in his hand. If the invisibility cloak is not given to Potter, there is no way of knowing what will happen when Dumbledore gets the Resurrection Stone. Correct. Thinking of the Resurrection Stone, Solemn suddenly remembered that before Voldemort, the owners of the Resurrection Stone were his grandfather, Mavolagunt, and his uncle, Morfin. How did Marvolo die? After his release from Azkaban, he returned home, but by then Merope, Voldemort's mother, had eloped with Tom Riddle. As a result, no one cooked for him, and in the end he starved to death. And Morfin died in Azkaban after Voldemort took the Resurrection Stone, and the specific method of death is unknown. Solemn can't remember some details, but if that's the case, then Marvolo's method of death can really be regarded as suicide. Thinking of this, Solemn suddenly didn't want to eat anymore. He wanted to go back to his own room in the basement immediately, check it out, and study whether all his guesses were true or not. Boy, What are you thinking? Elrond called out to Solemn when he saw that there was something wrong with Solim's face. Solemn was still lost in his own thoughts, unresponsive to the outside world. Boy, let me ask you what you think. Elrond shouted again. Solemn still didn't respond. His brain was running extremely fast now, and he didn't even notice that his grandfather and sister were looking at him. Elrond's face darkened, and he took out his wand and hit Solemn. Solemn twitched and fell from his chair. Serna quickly jumped off the high chair she was sitting on, and was about to run to help her brother. She saw her brother was twitching on the ground in pain, his eyes were bulging, his teeth were clenched, and he was curled up together. Leave him alone, let him get up by himself. Elrond stopped Serna. Glancing at the twitching Solemn, Elrond picked up his knife and fork and continued slicing his steak. When Solemn stood up, his body was still twitching slightly, but this feeling was really long gone. Grandpa, don't you need to use the Cruciatus curse? Solemn sat back on the chair trembling. HMPH. Who knows what evil you have been in? You didn't answer twice. Elrond put down the knife and fork, looked at Solemn. Besides, you are too slow, 30 seconds have passed, if this in skull, Solemn didn't say anything, he knew what his grandfather was going to say. Indeed, my recovery was a bit slow. If it was still in Skylar, Solim's performance just now was unqualified, so the extra Cruciatus curse every month would not be able to escape. Tell me, what happened just now? Why are you thinking so preoccupied? Elrond asked. Solemn thought about it, and decided it would be better not to say anything until he figured it out. Solemn shook his head. I think I'll talk about some things after I figure it out. If I need help, I'll come to you, Grandpa. Feeling that he had almost recovered, Solemn stood up and prepared to go back to the basement. Elrond kept staring at Solim's back until he disappeared around the corner, then looked at Selna beside him. What's going on? Did you say something to your brother just now? When you came here just now, you were on the way just whispering. I just told my brother what I found in the book. Selna told Elrond what happened just now. Narrowing his eyes, Elrond thought for a while, then turned his head and said to Serna, then let's do this first, since your brother is back, then you will live next door to him, and you will also live in the basement in the future. Don't live in the original place to save trouble. Solemn is now looking for books in the library in the basement. He now needs the book that records the Gaunt family, and the book that records the Deathly Hallows. In a word, he needs all the information that can prove his conjecture. Elrond was already waiting for Solemn when Solemn entered his room with a levitating spell and a pile of books. Looking at the pile of books behind Solemn, Elrond frowned. What's going on? What did you think of? I have an immature guess. Solemn replied to his grandfather as he piled all the books on the table. We all read the story of the three brothers when we were young, but no one went deep into the hidden things in the story. Serna's words remind me. Solemn turned to look at Elrond. That may not be just a story, a children's book. Go on. We all know that the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Invisibility Cloak are the so-called Three Hallows. Solemn began to organize the books he had brought back. The owner of the Elder Wand died of homicide, the owner of the Resurrection Stone died of suicide, and the owner of the Invisibility Cloak died of old age natural death. I want to check, the wizards who have these Deathly Hallows in the past, what is the method of death, and does it conform to the method of death represented by these objects? So, what does this have to do with you? Elrond asked, crossing his arms, seeing how you care so much, or are you thinking about one of them? Do you know how many catties and tails you have? Except for the Elder Wand, which everyone knows is in the hands of Old Man Dang, the other two have long since disappeared. Are you so courageous now? Dare to hit the Elder Wand idea. Elrond taught Solemn from the sidelines. Why do these words sound so familiar? The words, what does it have to do with you, and a few catties, seem to be what Solemn said when he taught Harry Potter a lesson. Within a few days of turning around, I was taught a lesson by the same words. Solemn looked at his grandfather dumbfounded. I didn't say that I wanted to fight Dumbledore, how dare I? Then I don't understand. Then why are you looking for information in such a hurry? Or, Elrond stared at Solemn, do you know the whereabouts of the other two? Alas, it is a wise saying that people grow old and smart. Nodding helplessly, Solemn said, I know the locations of the three Deathly Hallows. Didn't I tell you before dinner that I was going to Little Hangleton? The resurrection stone is there. I want to get the idea of the resurrection stone, but if it is to get the resurrection stone and finally commit suicide, I am a little hesitant. That's why I want to prove my guess is wrong. Little Hangleton. Elrond touched his chin. This name is a bit familiar. It turns out that Gaunt. Oh, I remember that family of lunatics. Elrond narrowed his eyes. If you say that idiot Riddle. Elrond suddenly opened his eyes wide and excitedly said to Solemn, Horcrux. The resurrection stone is that idiot Horcrux. What else could Solemn say? Grandpa, how do you know that the resurrection stone is a Horcrux? This idiot, Riddle, made a Horcrux. Everyone knows about it. That witch named Evans used a blood curse. At that time, the Spell Management Committee investigated this matter for a while, but it was ignored later. Quote. Elrond said in a natural tone. Riddle is an idiot, the elders will be lazy to deal with him and let him make trouble. Anyway, Dumbledore will deal with him. Besides, it may be a secret to the outside world that Riddle made a Horcrux, but after knowing that he is not dead, we people it was immediately deduced that he made Horcruxes. This is the benefit of ancient families. They have a long history and a large number of books, which makes them no much more than ordinary wizards. At a time when ordinary wizards were still celebrating the end of the Dark Ages, these people knew that Voldemort was not dead, and deduced from this the fact that he made Horcruxes. Besides, for ordinary wizards, Riddle's life experience may be a secret, but for us, he has no secrets at all. Who doesn't know that he is Marvolo's grandson? The ring of the Gaunt family is the Resurrection Stone. This is known by many people, and the whereabouts of the Resurrection Stone was unknown later, and many people thought it was in Riddle's hands, so it seems that this is the case. The Resurrection Stone should have been made into a Horcrux by him. Hearing Elrond's words, Solemn couldn't laugh or cry. With just such a little information, his grandfather identified a Horcrux of Voldemort. Yes, the Resurrection Stone is his Horcrux. But why call him a fool? Solemn asked. Voldemort is still a great wizard no matter what. Elrond is about the same age as Voldemort, you are not a great wizard yet. What qualifications do you have to call someone a fool? HMPH. What is it if a Horcrux is not a fool? Elrond said confidently, not to mention that he took the initiative to make Horcruxes. He is so stupid. Seeing that Solemn didn't understand, Elrond began to give Solemn explained. It is wrong to say that the inventor of the Horcruxes was the ancient Greek wizard, the despicable Herbo. The correct statement is, the function of making a Horcrux that can make people immortal was first discovered by High Herbo. In black magic, really black magic, there are a lot of curses that are directed at the soul. These curses aimed at the soul are generally extremely difficult to get rid of. They are like gangrene, tormenting the wizard's soul and sapping the wizard's will until the cursed person dies. Of course, wizards who have been cursed will not just sit and wait for death. They will try their best to get rid of the curse. In this way, the Horcrux was invented. However, it is impossible to verify who was the first wizard to invent the Horcrux. The current mainstream theory is that the Peverell family invented the Horcrux. The way to make a Horcrux is to peel off part of one's own soul and seal it into a pre-prepared container. If it is a person who has been cursed by the soul, they will separate the cursed part of their soul and seal it into a Horcrux. This is the same as the docking of Gecko's tail, but Gecko's tail can still grow back, and the soul that has been cut off will not grow back. The human body, soul, and consciousness all have a certain self-healing function. It's like breaking a bone or cutting a big cut in your arm, these injuries can be healed. But if you cut off the whole arm, the arm will not grow back. The same is true for the soul. If it is slightly injured, it will be fine if it rests for a while, but if it is like making a Horcrux so many souls are cut, there is no way to recover. And what happens when a person's soul is incomplete? Please refer to Mr. Fu. Generally speaking, wizards who make Horcruxes are desperate, and they really have no choice but to make Horcruxes for survival. But Voldemort made a Horcrux without any illness or disaster. His behavior is a fool's behavior in the eyes of high-end wizards. This is like a person with severe burns in his limbs. If he does not amputate his limbs, he will die. Voldemort was fine, his arms and legs were sharp, and he chopped off his own limbs. What is this kind of behavior if it's not a fool? No wonder wizards of Elrond's origin look down on Voldemort. To put it mildly, the Gaunt family are descendants of Slytherin, but to put it bluntly, they are a group of lunatics and fools. The long-term inbreeding has indeed made their blood pure, but it has brought more negative effects, and the Gunter family also likes to pay attention to ostentation. They have no property and income, and finally squandered all the property passed down by their ancestors empty. In the end Marvolo and Morfin didn't even have a decent wizard's robe. After a brief explanation, Elrond began to ask Solemn, "I'm curious, how did you know where the resurrection stone is?" Before Solemn could speak, Elrond immediately said, "I guess you also know, I'm too lazy to ask these questions. What I want to ask is, what are you going to do after you get the resurrection stone?" Solemn told Elrond about his promise to Snape. We all know that the soul summoned by the resurrection stone is just an illusion. It has a real purpose, as long as it is used correctly. I promised Professor Snape that he and meet Lily Evans. That's all. Professor Snape says he's going to solve the problem of the soul, Solemn added. These are small problems. After completing what you promised him. What are you going to do with the resurrection stone? Come on, this has already been clearly stated, how could Solemn not be on the road? I'll give it to you, what else can I do? Solemn said, what else can I do if you've already talked about this? Don't be unhappy. This is for your own good, this thing is not something you can hold now, and the resurrection stone will indeed exert an influence on the holder. If my guess is right, wouldn't that hurt you? Solemn thought it was better to solve this problem first. Hey, don't look at those people in the Presbyterian Church who have been using the Philosopher's Stone for so long. When the time comes, everyone will die, and no one will be able to escape. Elrond was very disdainful of this. Anyway, everyone is going to die, yes, I don't care how he died. But Horcruxes are different. Elrond's eyes lit up when he said this. Horcruxes are very rare things. No matter how many people want to see them, they can't see them. If you catch it, why don't you take it back and study it carefully? I've known this for a long time, Solemn said inwardly. Doesn't he know what kind of virtue his grandfather is? Curse breakers, or occupations similar to curse breakers, most of these wizards have a strong thirst for knowledge, and it is these people who promote the progress of the wizarding world. Grandpa, do you mean that you don't need to read these things? Solemn pointed to a pile of books on the table. I'm still going to test my guess. You can watch it if you want. This is your own business. Research is like this. If you have an idea, prove it, whether it is right or wrong, you can always get fun from it. Elrond said that you can do whatever you want, okay? We'll go to Orvis's house tomorrow afternoon, and we'll go to Little Hangleton the morning after tomorrow. What kind of family dinner? Who cares about that stuff? Elrond had already arranged the itinerary. Family dinner. Solemn didn't have to go even if he wanted to. He was an illegitimate child. In a family like Selwyn, he was not qualified to participate in this kind of event. He can live in Selwyn Castle now. It's already thanks to his grandfather's blessing. After Elrond left, Solemn continued to work on the flipbook. He desperately wanted to know if his guess was correct, if the Deathly Hallows held a deeper secret, and if they could determine how a person died. As Solemn flipped through the book, he used the scribe charm to write down information he thought would be useful on the parchment. Unsurprisingly, Solemn found information about the Gaunt family in the book, the Vanishing Family, and the manuscript, 19th century pure blood family memorabilia. They both recorded the deaths of Marvolo and Morfin, but Solemn was not very satisfied with the vague information of Marvolo's, died at home, and Morfin's, buried in Azkaban. If it doesn't work, ask someone to find the memories of the wizards who have been in contact with their deaths. But this kind of thing can only trouble Grandpa. Solemn thought while flipping through the book. Of course he had a more direct way, to ask Dumbledore, who had personally investigated Morfin back then. But this was the last resort. If possible, Solemn didn't want to deal with Dumbledore. He knew that this old man with white beard was not so grand and upright, and he had a lot of black history. And loves to use legilimency on other people. Seems like all legilimency masters have this stink. Every now and then, he uses legilimency to read the other party's mind without the other party's knowledge. Solemn was silent now, looking at the 3 circles on the parchment, and he drew a 3-circle intersection to help him sort out the relationship between the 3 Deathly Hallows. If a Deathly Hallows represents one way of death, or excludes the other two ways of death. The combination of the Elder Wand and the Resurrection Stone is quite understandable, excluding natural death, voluntary killing. This is also Dumbledore's way of death. But the combination of the Elder Wand or the Resurrection Stone and the invisibility cloak made Solemn a little confused. To die naturally, but also to satisfy suicide or homicide. Isn't this a logical contradiction? If this way of thinking doesn't work, let's think about it differently. Instead of thinking about the way of death represented by the Deathly Hallows, consider the other two ways of death that a Deathly Hallows excludes. The Elder Wand and the Resurrection Stone rule out natural death, the Elder Wand and the Invisibility Cloak rule out suicide, and the Resurrection Stone and the Invisibility Cloak rule out homicide. Solemn wrote and drew on the parchment, looked at the blank space between the three circles, licked his lips, and tapped vigorously on the blank space between the three intersecting circles with a quill. What would be the gap in the middle after suicide, homicide, and natural death were ruled out? Immortality. Or something else? Solemn was getting a little fidgety now, and he took out his wand and burned the parchment in front of him, along with the quill. Indeed, as Elrond said, so what if you know these things, so what if you don't know? It doesn't help me in any way, and it also involves my energy and time. Solemn thought about it carefully for a while, and thought it was better to ignore these things at this stage. Even if he wanted to study the Deathly Hallows, he would have to wait until Voldemort and Dumbledore were dead. Just keep Potter from sticking the Elder Wand. Solemn believes that his main goal at this stage is to improve his own strength. Everything else should be secondary. The reason why he went to Hogwarts, apart from his little thoughts in his heart, was more to avoid disaster, staying under Dumbledore's nose. Many people would not be blatant deal with yourself. After all, Hogwarts is Dumbledore's home ground, and headmaster of Hogwarts is more than just a title. As long as he didn't get in the way of Dumbledore's plans, and didn't go too far in school, Dumbledore wouldn't care much about himself. You know, when Solemn takes out a nasty person in a black glove duel, all kinds of troubles start to come, and Solemn believes that the woman will still kill him if she gets the chance. Oh, when is the end? Solemn glanced at the mountain of books on the table, flicked his wand, tidied them up, and took them out with the levitation charm to return the books. Unlike Solemn's irritable mood, Harry Potter far away at Hogwarts was much happier. He received a lot of presents this morning, the pullover knitted by Mrs. Weasley. This was the first time anyone gave him a gift. He knits. There is also an invisibility cloak given to him by a mysterious person. Harry and his friend Ronald have already tried it. Early the next morning, Solemn got up and started to prepare things. In the afternoon, he and Elrond would go to the Orvis family to see a small squib. If the squib can use magic power, Solemn and Elrond, it will solve the matter of Cierna. If there is a squib in the family of pure-blood wizards, it should be well hidden, lest outsiders find out. After all, in the eyes of pure-blood wizards, it is very shameful to have a squib in the family. I am very satisfied with finding 3 potential squibs, Solemn. Of course, if it is to be on the safe side, after the success of the Orvis family, let them promote it, so that there may be 1 or 2 more experimental products. But my younger sister couldn't afford to wait anymore. She was already 10 years old this year, and she will be at the age of going to school next year. If Cierna can't become a wizard before she is 11 years old, then her future fate will be difficult to say. No matter what magic school it is, it does not accept admission after the age of 11. These schools can accept transfer students from other schools, but they will not accept new students who are older than 11 years old. There are too many wizards in the wizarding world who have not attended formal schools. Only little wizards who awaken their magic power before the age of 11 are worthy of being cultivated. Take a look at Nocturne Alley. Those down-and-out wizards are mostly wizards who have not received formal school education. Their magic awakened too late, they are over 11 years old, and the school does not accept them. Wizards who have not received formal education, their knowledge is unsystematic. They can only grope and learn by themselves, while doing some shameless dirty work to obtain resources to continue their wizarding path. These wizards who have not received formal education, their abilities are not comprehensive. Most of these wizards can't even do simple transformation, because transformation can be said to require the most systematic learning in magic. They do not have this condition. Most of such wizards can only roll around in potions and herbs, and some even don't even have wands. Only regular wizards can buy wands, and these wizards who have not registered with the Ministry of Magic can only live in the dark corners of the wizarding world, places like Nocturne Alley. Solemn didn't want Cerna to live like that in the future. Although Cerna was a serious Selwyn, for pure-blood wizards, squibs were even more annoying than muggles. The attitude towards the squibs is mostly indifferent, and some extreme families will even kill the squibs in the family to maintain the so-called glory. Cierna's affairs can't be delayed, either become a wizard, or live as an ordinary person, far away from everything she is familiar with. Even if the medicine has no effect on Cerna, she can only be an ordinary person in the end, and I believe Grandpa will not ignore her. Although Snape's series of potions have been completed, and the effects have been shown by Filch, it is completely unknown whether it is suitable for Cerna and whether it will be effective for his sister. Putting aside the matter of Cerna, if the visit of the Orvis family goes well this time, it will be very beneficial to Solemn. At that time, various families will contact him one after another. Please ask him. Solving the squib problem in their respective families will undoubtedly bring Solemn a lot of connections, and Solemn will also gain a lot of favors. In this way, if some people or families want to move him, they have to weigh it carefully. The Orvis family is also an ancient pure-blood family. Their herbal medicine plantation is very famous in the industry. As long as they are masters of potions, they cannot avoid the Orvis family. After all, the production of precious potion materials in their plantations is the largest. If this trip could help that little squib become a wizard, it would be a great start for Solemn. After a hasty meal at noon, Elrond set off with Solemn. Here is one point. A family like Selwyn would not use the Flow network. The first reason is because the Flow network is under the supervision of the Ministry of Magic by the Council of Elders. Once the Flow network is connected, the position of the Selwyn family is equivalent to being exposed to the Ministry of Magic, so people like Selwyn and Orvis, such a family would not be connected to the Flow network like ordinary wizarding families. The second reason is because of the security of the Flow network. Once the Flow network is connected at home, for a skilled wizard, they can come whenever they want, regardless of whether you have unilaterally closed it or not. People outside could come in and out of the fireplace at any time, which was absolutely unbearable for an ancient pure-blood family. Cornwall Peninsula, here can be said to be the southernmost tip of the entire country of Ying. North of Plymouth, Dartmoor National Park hides the estate of the Orvis family and 3 plantations. This is a paradise for hikers, of course. They can't get close to the place where wizards live. It can be said that in Cornwall, where the climate is most suitable for planting herbs, the Orvis family is the master here, and they send a large amount of mature herbs to the whole of Europe every year. Herbs. Not just British. And there are their plantations all over Europe, but the manor in Dartmoor is their ancestral home, and people with status in the family usually live here. Walking in the magnificent scenery of Dartmoor Public Park, Solemn's original restless mood could not help but also open up. He was thinking about building a house of his own sometime. If he didn't return to Selwyn Castle, Solemn would have nowhere to live except in the leaky cauldron. It's just, he was short of cash. Although Solemn did have some savings, he could buy some potion materials with this money. If he really wanted to build a house, it would be ridiculous. Just like in a certain country after the millennium, young people grit their teeth and buy a car to make ends meet, but want to buy a house. HMPH, you can't even afford it if your teeth are broken. And the wizarding world doesn't say that if you want to build a house, you can find a piece of land by yourself, and you can build it with some stones and wood. This needs to be approved by the Ministry of Magic, and the local situation needs to be investigated, whether muggles are densely populated, whether there is a risk of exposing the wizarding world, how big the house is to be built, and what materials to use. Approved, you can build your own house. Building a house without the approval of the Ministry of Magic is an illegal building. Not only will it be demolished, but you will also be fined, and you may even have to go to Azkaban for a few days. Even if the approval is approved, you still have to pay a large sum of galleons to the Ministry of Magic for the land. Don't say that it is inaccessible and uninhabited. Even if you build a house in the desert, you still have to pay for it, if Ying has deserts. It's here, it's just ahead. Elrond gestured to the side. Solemn looked at the huge rock in front of him and asked, "Go in." Elrond slammed into the rocks, and he was gone. Solemn shrugged, and walked towards the rock in a learned manner. Isn't this the same as platform 9 3/4? Solemn complained. The greening work of Orvis Manor is quite good, presumably their elves are very good at trimming these flowers and plants. On the left side in front of the gate, Solemn even saw a ghost tree. A wand made of ghost wood is best at using soul magic, but if you use a ghost wood wand to release white magic like the Patronus charm, and you're done. As for why Solemn knows about ghost trees, of course Skylar has taught him well. Ghost trees are the kind of plants that must never be burned with fire. Ghost trees emit a smell after burning, and people will smell them when they smell them. To become a ghost, to put it bluntly, means to die. Is it appropriate to just plant such a dangerous plant at the gate? Don't you understand? Elrond knew what Solemn was thinking when he saw him. Don't think about it, you will be surprised when you go in later. At this time, an old man in a red wizard robe came out of the gate. Old man, you're going to be late, come in quickly, don't whimper. Although Solemn was a little far away, Solemn couldn't see the old man's face clearly, but as soon as he heard the voice, Solemn knew who was coming, Jill Wes, a wizard who likes to chat with Elrond. Elrond snorted, took Solemn and walked towards the gate. While walking, he also explained to Solemn, remember, when you go in later, no matter who asks you about the situation of the medicine, you can go to my push yourself, don't bring the professors in your school into it. Jill knows the situation, but the others don't, so don't let it slip. Solemn did not turn the corner for a moment at Elrond's words. Idiot. Elrond cursed in a low voice, if other people know that the potion belongs to Snape, what will happen to you? With this sentence, Solemn figured it out. If the potion is successful, it means that certain squibs in special circumstances can become wizards, which also means that the families of these squibs will owe a favor to Solemn or Elrond. Snape. What about Solemn? Favors and benefits have become Snape's, although Snape doesn't necessarily care about it. But having said that, this thing is really not very authentic. But Solemn really needs the favor and relationship of these pure blood families now. At worst, he should be compensated with some potion ingredients in the future, or give him a few potion formulas. When Solemn saw the tree in the middle of the courtyard, he couldn't walk. His eyes widened and his mouth opened in an expression of extreme astonishment. Ha ha ha, let me just say, every wizard who comes to the ancestral home for the first time can't avoid this. Gilvez looked at Solemn with joy. Boy, you're back. Elrond was not happy to see Solemn lose his composure in front of Gilvez. Isn't it just a broken tree, what's so rare? Fart. Gilvez on the side was furious when he heard this. Don't forget what kind of virtue you were when you saw it for the first time. If I hadn't stopped you, you would have chopped it up and taken it away. It's really snakewood. Solemn did recognize this extremely precious tree. The famous snakewood, Slytherin's staff is made of snakewood. Snakewood can be used in many fields, whether it is potions or alchemy, it can be used. However, the most common method of snakewood is to make it into a magic tool, magic wand or stave. I really want it. Solemn was tempted, and all wizards who knew the role of snakewood were not tempted. A spell casting tool made of snakewood has no upper limit of magic power when casting a spell. Meaning, you can even use all your magic power to cast a stun spell. You must know that most wands have an upper limit of the magic power they can withstand. You can only use so much magic power when you release a stun spell. No matter how much magic power is injected into the wand, it will only be that kind of power in the end. But the snakewood is different. At present, the upper limit of the magic power of the snakewood has not been found. Maybe the magic power level of human wizards has not touched the upper limit of the magic power that the snakewood itself can carry. With a snakewood wand, you can even kill people with a single stun spell, provided, of course, that your magic power is very strong. Boy, if you can solve the matter of little Fletcher, it doesn't matter if I give you a piece of snake wood. Jules said with a smile on the side. Hey, just the two of us, you just give one. Elrond squinted at Gilvez. Fortunately, you are still the current head of the house, so stingy, it seems that the Orvis family will be like this in the future. Fart. Jules was too much to be ridiculed. I don't know what you are paying attention to. If it really works, I will give you one for each of you. Stop talking nonsense. Let's talk about it when it is done. If the time comes, it will be a waste of time. Field. Gilvez sneered. Okay, boy, come in quickly. Elrond greeted Solemn, who was still staring at the snake wood. Get your work done first, and you can look at it as you want. Inside the room, the trio of Elrond, Gilvez, and Solemn are now staring together at a young boy who is the target of this therapy, Flegorvis. He just drank the magic reaction potion, and now his whole body is hot. Solemn now needs to record the reaction time, judge the amount of magic power in the boy's body by the length of time, and then use the potion formula given by Snape to prepare the potion. When Gilvez, who had been following the situation, signaled the end of the reaction, Solemn nodded. 5 minutes, no problem. 5 minutes is the duration of the reaction. And no problem means that the child's magic power reaches the standard and he can become a wizard. Don't look at Filch's 30 minutes at that time. How old is Filch? And this kid is only 10 years old. When Solemn said that he needed to brew potions on the spot, Gilvez stood up and said, maybe he is not good at fighting or something, but when it comes to brewing potions, all of you here are scumbags. After all, the Orvis family is in the business of potion materials, and the Orvis family has inherent advantages. Many potions masters in history came from the Orvis family. Like Elrond, Gilvez is not very good at fighting. After all, no wizard is good at all fields. Isn't Dumbledore still bad at potions? But what I said here is not good at it is from the perspective of a high-end wizard. When Gilvez was brewing the potion, Elrond also began to introduce the Orvis family to Solemn. The family was not prosperous, and Gilvez's son and daughter-in-law had passed away, and they left this child. But the kid was later revealed to be a squib. It's not hard to imagine what kind of blow it would have on the Orvis family. The sole heir turned out to be a squib, so what would happen to the Orvis family in the future? Is the property of the Orvis family going to be left to some relative with a remote bloodline? Or was some family rushing up to bite like a shark? Or is it managed by the Presbyterian Church? Where will the Orvis family go from now on? Fortunately, Solemn appeared, and he brought good news to the Orvis family. If this little boy named Flag could be turned into a wizard, it is not difficult to imagine how grateful the Orvis family would be to Solemn, who provided the potion. As long as you are a wizard, you can't do without potions, especially for high-end wizards. And as the largest herbal medicine supplier in the whole of England, and even the whole of Europe, what kind of connections and relationships does the Orvis family have? As long as you are not a fool, you can clearly understand how powerful the Orvis family is, and how will they repay Solemn for saving them. Just as Gilvez was seriously brewing the potion, while Solemn and Elrond were talking, the door of the room was roughly pushed open. Uncle, I heard that the person who claims to be able to save the Orvis family is here. Let me take a look, don't you mind? A big and round wizard walked in, followed by an acquaintance of Solemn. Father, this is. The people who came in later saw that Solemn was about to open his mouth, but when he saw Elrond beside Solemn, he hesitated again. What? Lehman, has your memory deteriorated since I left Skylar? Can't you remember my name? Solemn stood up and looked at the person with cold eyes. Or, the memory I left for you is not deep enough. The adult wizard who just came in narrowed his eyes and looked at Solemn's flickering eyes, then laughed and said, you must be Solemn, I've heard of you, how is it? Is the rich family looking for trouble for you? Don't worry, Lee and I, the members of the Chi family, are very familiar. I can help you connect and let you. You have to keep your mouth shut, or get out. My patience is limited. Jules turned his head and looked coldly at the burly wizard. I won't say it a second time. The wizard smiled, and retreated with his own child. I made you laugh, Jules said, then turned his head and continued tinkering with potions. After hearing Elrond's explanation, Solemn knew what was going on. The big and round wizard just now was called Deliovis, the child of Gilvez's brother. After the death of Gilvez's brother, Gilvez has been in charge of him, and he has always regarded himself as the heir of the Orvis family. After all, a squib cannot become the head of a pure-blood family, but Solemn is here, and it is said that he can make a squib a wizard. Can he be in a hurry? If it hadn't been for Fleeger, who had been under Gilvez's nose all the time, there would have been an accident long ago. Elrond need not mention the person behind Derry, that person Solemn is very familiar with. The rich family that Deli mentioned just now is the family whose heir was killed by Solemn. Through the black gloves, Solemn killed the heir of the rich family, and this Lyman turned out to be Rich's follower, and he dealt with Solemn a lot. After Solemn killed Rich, their gang still didn't hold back. In their opinion, Solemn, the fool, would not live for a few days. But what I didn't expect was that Solemn left Skylar in the end, went to Hogwarts to study, and stayed under Dumbledore's nose. No one would deal with Solemn blatantly. In Skull, unless it was a senior student who made a move, none of these 13 or 14-year-old wizards could beat Solemn. Although Schuyler's students are very hardworking, Solemn is of course far stronger than these children in terms of the ideological awareness and self-control of an adult, and Solemn's talent is much higher than these little wizards. Those little wizards who looked down on Solemn's background would only sneer at him, but few who really dared to fight Solemn. It was already dusk when Gilvez finished the potion. Of course, Solemn would not be idle during this time. He had been reading in the library until Elrond notified him that the potion was finished, and he reluctantly closed it. Book. He had already copied quite a few potion formulas during this time, and Solemn was quite satisfied with what he had gained. When Solemn and Elrond returned to their original room, Gilvez was reading Solemn's codex. Noticing that someone came in, Gilvez raised his head and said, "Boy, are you sure you can only use this medicine for the first time? The potion Snape had developed wasn't going to turn a squib into a wizard with just one drop. Just like Muggle medicines, there is also a course of treatment, and the order of taking the medicines is also different depending on the situation of the user. But since Snape and Solemn only had Filch as an experimental subject, some details needed to be considered. Obviously, there is nothing Solemn can do about this highly professional problem, but Elrond and Gilvez are good at it, and it is best for them to judge which potion Flieger uses at what stage up." Half an hour after pouring the first bottle of potion into Flage, everyone was finally satisfied. It was indeed effective, but to really become a wizard, there were still 3 bottles of potion to be studied in order. But this had already satisfied Gilv so much that he didn't even eat, and went straight into his laboratory with Solemn's letter, and Solemn and Elrond didn't even eat. But Elrond wasn't angry, and he still counted on his old friend to help him with Cerna's matter. In the field of potions, he also knew that he was indeed inferior to Gilvez. However, there is still plenty of time. There are still 9 months before the Hogwarts freshmen start school. During this period of time, it is enough to settle the matter of Cerna. "Okay, we'll stay here tonight, and we'll go to Little Hangleton tomorrow morning." After finishing speaking, Elrond took Solemn to the guest room. Obviously, Elrond was familiar with Orvis Manor. "Really, I didn't think of myself as an outsider at all. In a dark room in the manor. Father, what should we do if that squib really becomes a wizard? The man named Solemn does have some talents, but I don't believe that he can develop that kind of potion completely by himself. Someone must have helped him. This person must be a potion master." After hesitating for a while, the man then said, "I will inform the rich family immediately that their heir has been killed by that kid, and they will not let it go. Is it really possible? Will they not carry the portkey? A wizard born like Elrond would carry a door key with him when he went out. After finishing things outside, you can use the door key to go back home directly, saving you the time of running back and forth. As for why apparition is not used, the Ministry of Magic can monitor wizards who use apparition or apparition to a certain extent, and whether it is migration or apparition, these two magics are limited. For example, in Orvis Manor, there is no way for outsiders to enter through apparition, and similarly, there is no way to leave through apparition. If you want to leave through apparition, you can only leave the scope of the manor. But it's much more convenient if you have the portkey with you, you don't have to go out, you can leave. Besides, using apparition consumes a lot of mana, and this magic is not too stable. Almost every week there will be a wizard who fails to manifest and splits up. But this method can only be used by families like Selwyn or Orvis without any scruples. What if ordinary wizards dare to use a portkey that has not been registered with the Ministry of Magic? It will be caught by the hitter in minutes. The portkey is not a panacea. As long as you can seize the opportunity, they will have no chance to leave. The door key also needs to be activated. As long as the timing is right, the activation of the door key can be interrupted. There is a cooling time for the reuse of the door key. As long as the two can be killed within this time, I believe that with my own means and the support of the rich family, the position of Patriarch Orvis belongs to me. With the support of the rich family, how could that old guy of Gilvez be his opponent? Early the next morning, Solemn and Elrond prepared to leave for Little Hangleton with a bunch of things from Gilvez. Deli also deliberately got up early in the morning, planning to interrupt when Elrond was about to use the portkey, so that they could either continue to wait for the cooling time of the portkey in the manor, or go out of the manor and use apparition. He had thought all about it, but what he didn't expect was that Elrond and Solemn left the manor without using the portkey at all. Aren't they planning to go back to Selwyn Castle directly? Deli wondered at a hidden corner. This way the plan will be disrupted, let's inform the rich family first. It seems that this time they won't be able to catch them. They're gone. Although Deli wanted to get rid of Elrond and Solemn, he would not let people ambush outside the manor, because doing so would definitely not hide it from Gilvez. The trouble that Elrond expected before did not appear, and no one tried to find out the secret of the potion. When he came to Little Hangleton, Solemn expressed his doubts. Fool, it's just in case, of course it's best not to, Elrond said impatiently, and I'm sure, you must not have noticed the little trick of that nephew of Gilvez. Solemn looked perplexed. Indeed, he knew that the two men had bad intentions, and he could guess that they wanted to prevent Flagger from becoming a wizard, because once Flagger became a wizard, the head of the Orvis family had nothing to do with Deli up. Even for this matter, some accidents may be created, which Solemn can figure out. But what does it have to do with me whether that kid named Flagger dies or not? That's something Gilvez should be worrying about. Usually he looks quite smart, but why is he so stupid when it comes to critical moments? Elrond was very dissatisfied. When we left just now, that kid was staring at us. He probably reported to Rich's family and prepared to ambush us. Of course, it's mainly you. Solemn killed his heir, it's no wonder he didn't retaliate. Usually hiding in Hogwarts, they really didn't have much chance in Dumbledore's territory, but this time Solemn was neither in Hogwarts nor hiding in Selwyn Castle, so of course they would not let go of such a good opportunity. Hearing this, Solemn was still a little nervous. After all, no matter how talented he is, it is impossible to deal with adult wizards at the age of 11, and since Elrond is with him, he must not be able to hide it from others, and they will definitely take Elrond's factors into consideration. In this way, as long as they are caught, the two of them are basically finished. Then what should we do? Solemn was a little anxious, even though he had killed people through black glove duels, and he had also experienced sneak attacks and ambushes in Sigil. But how can those children's house tricks compare to the battles between adult wizards? Don't look at Solemn as very talented, and he knows a lot of spells. But if you really want to confront an adult wizard, it would be good if he can last 4 or 5 rounds, and this is still an ordinary adult wizard. Is the rich family an ordinary family? No, so maybe the wizards they sent were worse than ordinary wizards. Look at you. Don't worry, they won't catch us. Elrond didn't care about it. I don't know if I am heartless or confident. Unlike the newly repaired main road, the dirt road is still winding, potholed, and full of rocks, and the bushes and hedges on both sides have become taller and denser. They grow irregularly, filling everything around, and even covering the original road. It has been nearly 100 years, but there is still not much change here, and time seems to be stagnant in this place. After passing the thick old trees, Solemn saw the old house of the Gaunt family. The Gaunt's house was easy to find, it was the shabby one. It's not just broken, it's about to collapse. Now, this house should be called a ruin, but it is more appropriate. The moss-covered walls are still there, supporting the main body of the old house tenaciously, covered with plants. The tiles on the roof have all fallen off, the exposed rafters have begun to rot, and the doors and windows have disappeared, leaving a dark hole. The sound of insects crawling through was heard from inside the house, and the dense nettles had already taken over the place. It's pretty good here, away from muggles, and you can save the expulsion spell. Elrond looked around. There is no trace of magic around. Solemn followed Elrond obediently into the old house of the Gaunt family. Solemn noticed that there were many holes in the door frame with daggers, which Morfin must have made when he was a child. Moffing Gaunt, he, like the other Gaunts, has the special gift of Parseltongue in his Slytherin blood. He likes to play with snakes, but he doesn't cherish them. He often nails these snakes to the door frame with a dagger to scare others after he gets tired of playing with them. Elrond in Gaunt's old house showed a side Solemn had never seen before. The wand in his right hand was shining brightly, illuminating the dim room in every detail. It also allowed Solemn to see his expression, extremely serious. Over there, Elrond motioned to Solemn, there is only trace of magic in the whole room. Solemn didn't feel anything anyway. All he smelled was a musty smell of damp wood and something rotting. It was a dilapidated wooden cabinet that had been covered in a thick layer of grime that made it impossible to see its original color. Elrond pointed his wand at one of the drawers, and it slid out slowly with a harsh sound. After all, it hadn't been opened for nearly half a century. There was a ring lying quietly in the drawer. Seeing this ring, Solemn and Elrond knew that they had found the right owner. The resurrection stone ring of the Gunter family is very famous. In Marvolo's time, and even earlier, the ring was the only source of income for the Gaunt family. The resurrection stone can summon the consciousness or soul of the dead, as long as you know how to use it correctly. Sometimes when some wizards need to summon a dead person, they will rent it from the Gunter family. This is why Marvolo's family is so poor and has not starved to death. Elrond was looking at the ring intently now, and then he raised his wand and pointed at it, saying some incantations that Solemn could not understand, and then Solemn saw a large black mist floating from the ring, and formed the shape of a human face, opened its mouth wide and let out a silent roar. Satisfied, Elrond took out a box, and polymorphed a stick into which he picked the ring. You're done. Let's go back quickly, I can't wait. Elrond said excitedly. It's that simple. Solemn couldn't believe it. This counts as getting it. Of course not. There is an instant death curse attached to it, which targets both body and soul. I dare say that if a great wizard wears it, even if he is not killed on the spot, he will not live for a few days. But it is not easy to lift this curse. Very simple. Find someone to take it with you. Elrond glanced at Solemn. Yes, just find someone to wear it, and the curse will be useless, one-time use. Riddle's enchantment level is still a little bit, but that's it. After speaking, Elrond raised his wand and waved it sharply. Solemn felt the room shake. Okay, I've cleared our traces, let's go back quickly. After speaking, Elrond shook his sleeves, and shook out a gray key. The key was tied to a chain, and the other end was tied to Elrond's on the wrist. Hold on to me. Solemn and Elrond did not encounter any attacks or ambushes, and they returned safely to Selwyn Castle through the portkey. When he came back, Elrond didn't say a word to Solemn, and hurried to the basement with the box. His legs and feet were more agile than the young man Solemn. When Solemn came to the door of Elrond, he saw his sister Silna looking at the door of her own room. What's wrong with Grandpa? Serna asked puzzledly. The one who yelled just now ran in. Ah. Of course Solemn would not tell his sister about the resurrection stone. I'm crazy, I'll go in and have a look, so don't come in, it's like a doghouse. Elrond didn't even notice that Solemn had entered. He was pointing at the resurrection stone with his wand, muttering, and writing something on the parchment on the side from time to time. Solemn sat down quietly at the side. He would not bother Elrond, who was in the research state now. Solemn came here mainly because he was afraid that Elrond would take it with him under the temptation of the ring. Solemn didn't know why Elrond didn't remove the curse on it before researching. But Solemn wouldn't be so stupid as to interrupt Elrond, who was in high spirits. As long as he watched here, if his grandfather had the tendency to wear the ring, he could interrupt him. I don't know how long they sat there, until Serna came in with a plate. Solemn didn't know it was time to eat. In this way, the brother and sister ate quietly while watching their grandfather muttering in front of the workbench. It was not until a long time after eating that Elrond woke up under the protest of his stomach. Have you all eaten? Elrond found that his two grandchildren had already eaten, and said dissatisfiedly, why don't you call me? Solemn and Serna looked at each other, and Serna said, brother should do this kind of scolding job. You were too involved, so we didn't call you. Solemn knew he had to change the subject quickly, or he would be scolded. How is it? Did you find anything? Sure enough, when it came to this, Elrond ignored the matter of eating, and talked about his discovery with dancing, even forgetting to let Serna avoid it. But Solemn didn't remind him. Solemn thinks that as his younger sister, Serna will know these things sooner or later, and Serna is not a talkative child, so it doesn't matter if she knows. It wasn't until the next morning that Solemn had time to see what Gilvez had given him. Yesterday, no, I slept too late today. It was almost 2 o'clock before Elrond stopped talking. If it weren't for the fact that Solemn and Cerna couldn't hold on anymore, Elrond would probably be able to talk until morning. When Solemn arrived, he couldn't wait to open the box he'd put his things in. 5 pieces of snake wood, and one of them is thick and long. This is the best snake wood that can make a wand. If it was the price, it is estimated that a great wizard could be hired to fight Voldemort. A piece of haunted wood, also an excellent wand material. A crystal of magic power, the alchemist will fight for this thing. Only some innate magical races will produce this kind of thing in their bodies under the baptism of time. Whether it's top-grade potions or alchemy accessories, with this thing, the grade will be completely different. Some other potion ingredients Solemn didn't even get to look at it because he opened a box. The box is covered with velvet, and there are 5 bottles of different sizes lying safely in it. The smallest bottle contains a colorless liquid. Solemn gasped when he saw the label on the bottle, Tears of the Phoenix. This is simply too extravagant. It never occurred to Solemn that Gilvez would thank him with something like this. What are the tears of the phoenix? To exaggerate, that is the second life. Any toxin, any trauma, as long as it is taken internally or externally in time, it can save your life. Don't look at Dumbledore has Fawkes, it seems that Phoenix's tears are nothing special. But think about it, how many wizards can have a pet like a phoenix? And even if Fawkes had conjunctivitis and shed tears 24 hours a day, how much could he shed? Is a 500 milliliters beaker enough? The tears of the phoenix are so valuable, some wizard families will not make this idea. Even if you think about it, you know it's impossible. Solemn didn't know that Dumbledore's phoenix had to pay the Council of Elders a share money every year. Otherwise, as the owner of Fawkes, Dumbledore could be short of money. Dumbledore has his own society, the Order of the Phoenix. And clubs need activities funds, but the activities funds of the Order of the Phoenix have always been very tight. For this reason, Dumbledore even took advantage of his position to wantonly embezzle the funds provided by the Hogwarts Board of Directors to meet the needs of the Order of the Phoenix. This is also due to the fact that there is no anti-corruption and bribery law in the wizarding world, and there is no anti-corruption bureau. He was arrested, and all his property might be confiscated. Solemn shivered and put away the smallest bottle, maybe he would need it sometime. The second bottle was a small Erlenmeyer flask filled with a golden viscous liquid. This Solemn does know, Felicia. You'll never find Felicia for sale in the market, absolutely not. You know, the material cost of the Felicity elixir alone is an astronomical figure. Moreover, some materials are first-class contraband or even special-class contraband. Wizards who illegally possess and sell these materials will be sentenced to life imprisonment once they are discovered. And the formula of Felicity elixir is strictly confidential, and only potion masters authorized by the Pharmacists Association know its formula. The most important thing is that Felicia potion is too difficult to configure. It will take half a year at the fastest to configure Felicia potion. During this half year, you don't have to do anything. You must keep an eye on it. Every now and then the next material may be added, which means you eat, you excrete, you rest, everything is affected. And once you start to configure the Felicity elixir, you must succeed, and if you fail halfway, the consequences will be disastrous. This is at least half a year. For half a year, you have to stay close to each other, and you have to stay in the same room for eating, excreting, and resting. Think about it, you are squatting there, and the potion has reacted here, and the next material needs to be added immediately, and you don't even have time to lift your pants, so you have to bring a pile of shit to add materials. That's pretty good. What about rest? People always need to rest. Even if there are energy potions and sobriety potions, it is impossible for people to stay awake for more than half a year. You just finished adding materials, and you sat down to take a nap. You heard the potion in a daze. There was a movement, and I woke up and stood up to see, it turned out to be a false alarm. After coming a few times, people can't take it anymore. It's not a neurasthenia to be a ghost. There are even some African pharmacists. When he stares at the medicine does not respond. Once he starts to excrete, eat, and rest, the reaction will come. Solemn felt that unless he aspired to be a master of potions in the future, even if he knew the formula and had the ability to configure Felicia, he would not configure it. Configuring Felicia was simply torture, a complete torture own. The Pharmacist Association is an authoritative department. If you want to evaluate your title, you can only go to the Pharmacist Association. If you want to become a master of potions, you must prepare a blessing potion. That is to say, as long as it is not bragging, a wizard tells you that he is a master potions master, then he must have prepared a Felicia, and it was successful. But the Felix elixir that has been successfully formulated will be taken away by the Pharmacists Guild. The euphemistic name is collection, because it has witnessed the birth of a new potion master. As for Gilvez, one of the 3 current deputy heads of the Pharmacists Association, the origin of the bottle of Felix Felicia he gave to Solemn is probably needless to say. The 3rd bottle was quite a bit bigger than the previous 2, but it was empty and there seemed to be no liquid in it. Seeing this, Solemn became excited. He quickly looked at the label. Sure enough, this is the potion of nothingness. Solemn was so excited. Potion of nothingness, this potion is just like its name, you can't see anything. It is not so much a potion as it is an encapsulated gas. Colorless and odorless. The potion of nothingness has only one effect, to allow the user to transform into a gas-like existence within a certain period of time. In this state, almost all magic will not work on the target, including Kadabra. However, this potion is taken in a different way than other potions, it is not for drinking. Whether you use your nose or mouth, the place where this bottle of potion will eventually enter is not your stomach, but your lungs. In other words, it goes through the respiratory tract, not the esophagus. Solemn put down the void potion, then looked at the 4th bottle. The 4th potion was a multicolored potion that Solemn only knew of one potion with that color, the universal potion. This potion is also known as the tasteless potion by wizards who know its efficacy. The omnipotent potion is the same as its name. Of course, it must be an exaggeration to say that this potion is omnipotent. But this potion can neutralize all known toxins, restore mana, and treat extremely serious trauma. Of course, if you have a cold or fever, drinking it will also help. In short, no matter what is wrong with you, if you have a bottle of elixir in your hand, it will solve the problem with it whether it is taken internally or externally. Just like essential oils. The reason why some wizards call it tasteless potion is because of its universal poisoned. Just configure the antidote. Restoring mana. There are so many potions that have the effect of restoring magic power, and they are not inferior to yours. Trauma. Baishian and various herbs and potions can do it for you. It seems to be omnipotent, but it overlaps with too many potion functions. You must know that one of the ingredients in the panacea is the tears of the phoenix. Considering the price of the tears of the phoenix, no, it is not price, it should be value. There is no price for phoenix's tears. Because you simply can't buy it. Various factors make the panacea both expensive and tasteless. But I have to say that when you don't know what's wrong with your body, the panacea is still very easy to use. Then Solemn looked at the last bottle, the largest one in the bottle. Dark green liquid, with brilliance flowing in it. This color, this feeling, is it possible? Solemn carefully studied the label on the bottle in his hand. Increase. Magic. Medicine. Potion. Solemn pronounced the name of the potion in disbelief. Solemn was not an ordinary wizard who knew nothing about high-end potions. How could he not know about the effects of potions of enhancing magic? Improving the user's physique can greatly increase the user's magic power growth rate and magic power affinity. Taking magic potion means that a wizard's magic power control level and total magic power will increase significantly. Compared to the dangerous and uncertain magic transformation, just look at Voldemort. Enchanting potions can improve all aspects of a wizard without side effects. The efficacy and properties of the magic-enhancing potion Solemn has learned about it through books, but the formula of the magic-enhancing potion has been lost long ago. Solemn put away the potion and is going to call his grandfather over to have a look. Not only to confirm the potion, but also to discuss with Elrond how to use the potion, whether to keep it for his sister or for himself. Leave it to Cerna, then Cerna's becoming a wizard is a certainty. If it was left to Solemn, there was a good chance that Solemn would have had the magic of an ordinary adult wizard in his 3rd or 4th year. Solemn needs to discuss with his grandfather how to choose the potion for enhancing magic. But having said that, Phoenix Tears, Blessing Elixir, Nihility Elixir, Universal Elixir, and Magic Enhancement Elixir are all potions that can help wizards improve their chances of survival and enhance their strength. The things Gilvez sent fully considered Solemn's current situation. Solemn was at Hogwarts, under Dumbledore's nose, and some people and families really didn't want to deal with Solemn blatantly. But what about poisoning Solemn through certain students in the school? And if Solemn really got his way by then, it would definitely not be an ordinary poison. At this time, Phoenix Tears and the elixir could help Solemn regain his life. It is also impossible for Solemn to stay in Hogwarts forever. He always leaves Hogwarts. In case of being hunted down or ambushed, the elixir of Void and Felicia can help Solemn escape. The enchantment potion can bring Solemn a real strength improvement. On the Hogwarts, extra slow train, of course it is an ultra slow train, with a speed of 60 to 80 kilometers per hour, who would call it an express train. Draco and his 3 followers were going car by car looking for Solemn. Hermione was doing the same thing with Neville. They couldn't contact Solemn during the holidays, and they got on the train and wanted to ask what happened to Solemn. But they were doomed not to find Solemn, because the man they were looking for never got on the train. Solemn couldn't stand wasting 7 or 8 hours in vain, just sitting on the train and doing nothing. There was no way he could do it when he was in school. Solemn flew to Hogsmeade this time through the fireplace in Diagon Alley. It was so convenient and the way to save time and effort. Solemn wouldn't be so stupid as to squeeze the train. Although the experience of using the flow network is terrible, Solemn is more acceptable in this way than wasting 7 or 8 hours on the train. Solemn is very satisfied with this Christmas holiday. His sister's affairs have settled down, and Selna will be able to go to Hogwarts next semester without accident. But the next semester is a bit dangerous, but Solemn is not too worried on the road. As long as you don't run around and go with the big army, nothing will happen, and you will be able to explain clearly to Cerna when the time comes. The things that Gilvez gave Solemn were too generous. In the end, under Elrond's strong request, Solemn took the magic potion at the end of the Christmas holiday. In the words of Elrond, the most precious things are given to those who need them most. Silna is not in any trouble, and no one will attack her. But Solemn is different. The Ritchie family and some wizards who depend on the Ritchie family's face are Solemn's enemies. The urgency for Solemn to increase his strength is much higher than that of Cerna. In view of this situation, it is still necessary to increase potions are more appropriate for Solemn to take. After all, in Elrond's view, Cerna is a girl after all, and a girl must marry after all. Moreover, in the wizarding world, witches seldom take part in battles. Fighting and dying are basically the responsibility of wizards. So, even if Silna becomes a great wizard in the future, her strength is just for show, and basically she won't be useful. But Solemn was different. He was a boy, or not, he was still a member of the Selwyn family. And when Silna married someone, she was no longer a member of the Selwyn family. Although it is really annoying to say patriarchal, profit maximization, etc., but the general environment of the entire wizarding world is like this, and it is understandable that Elrond would consider it this way. At the start of term dinner, Draco had been bragging to Solemn about the reward Lucius Malfoy had given him. Next term Malfoy would be sponsoring the Slytherin Quidditch Team 7 Nimbus. The reason is because Draco showed Lucius the silent casting of the disarming curse when he returned home, which shocked and excited Lucius. Shouting that the Malfoy family did not feel ashamed of their ancestors, they had cultivated such a genius as Draco, and the glory of reviving the family was just around the corner, and excitedly agreed to Draco's request, to sponsor Slytherin's Quidditch team. 7 light wheels don't come cheap. If the ordinary sweep series is the old Jetta, the Comet series is the Poussin, and the Nimbus series is the BMW. The price of 7 light wheels can only be afforded by a pure-blooded wizard like Malfoy. You see, Weasley doesn't even have a single better broom at home. They're all dying sweepers and Comet 140s, which are almost antiques. It's not hard to understand why the students reacted so much when they learned that Slytherin had 7 halos in 2nd grade. Nimbus 2000. Solemn wasn't interested in Quidditch, nor in broomsticks, but that didn't prevent him from knowing the basics. No, 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 Draco shook his fingers proudly. It's Nimbus 2001. It's said that it hasn't been released yet, and it will take a few months, but our academy will definitely be able to use it next year. By the way, Draco suddenly said to Solemn in a very strange tone. My dad said, it's very difficult for people like you Selwyn to get in touch with you, isn't it? Solemn knew what was going on without thinking about it. During the Christmas holidays, Draco must have contacted him, but outsiders owls would definitely not be able to get close to Selwyn Castle. Regardless of Solim's letter to Elrond at school, he knew what to do so that the owl would not be expelled. The house elves of the Selwyn family have a daily task of expelling all owls that fly towards the castle. As long as they do not carry a special emblem, the owls will be expelled if they cannot get close to the castle. Don't think this is just to show how aggressive the Selwyns are, it's a defensive measure. Roaring letters, as long as you are a wizard, you know this thing, it seems that it is nothing to receive a roaring letter. But what if it wasn't human voices that were included in the howling letters? What about the recorded call of a ripe mandrake? Anyone who hears it will die. Killing people with howl letters that incorporate mandrake calls is nothing new. After dinner, Solemn is stopped by Filch. After listening to Filch's words, Solemn remained silent for a long time. Snape's potion did work for Filch, that was a given. But with the passage of time, some problems also emerged. That is, Filch was too old, he was different from those little squibs. Even if children sealed their magic power, they were still young and could have how much magic. A few bottles of potion down will do the trick. But how old was Filch? Can his self-sealed magic power be compared with those of those children? Those potions could indeed release part of Filch's magic power, but compared to the magic power that Filch could use, the magic power that was still in a self-sealed state was more. And if he wanted to activate the magic power that was still in the sealed state, he had to continue taking Snape's potion. But when Solemn and Snape confirmed that the potion was working, they left Filch alone. So the magic power that Filch can use now is still a little bit. After all, Snape wasn't warm-hearted, he was too lazy to care about such things, so Filch had to come to Solemn. Now the question for Solemn was whether to deal with Filch or not. You know, those potion materials are very precious, a bottle is almost 50 galleons, and the magic power in Filch's body needs at least a dozen courses of treatment. Argus. Solemn said after a moment of deliberation, I understand your situation. You want medicine, but you have to pay for the materials yourself. You also know my situation. I don't have much money. It turned out that the potions he drank were paid for by Professor Snape himself. If you can provide the materials, I think I'm still willing to help you. Solemn said that if you can provide materials or the cost of purchasing materials, then we can still talk. Surely Snape won't care about this matter, should I, a pauper, pay for it out of his own pocket? Is Filch rich? There must be some, but at his level at Hogwarts, the salary is definitely not much. But considering that Filch has worked at Hogwarts for so many years, as long as he doesn't spend money extravagantly, his savings should be quite considerable. Although there is no 5 social insurance and 1 housing fund, Hogwarts includes food and housing, and there is no need to pay electricity bills. There is no place to spend it nearby except Hogsmeade, so Solemn thinks that Filch should have a lot of savings, but it is definitely not enough to completely release the magic power in his body. After dismissing Filch for a while, Solemn finally returned to the Slytherin common room. Solemn knew that the highlight of this year would be next, the big battle of the Treasure Guard team. For this reason, at the end of the Christmas holiday, Solemn went to the city to buy a few buckets of popcorn, and prepared to go to the scene at that time. Now those buckets of popcorn are sitting in Solim's box, which has food-preserving magic so that it's still warm when it's time to take it out. Solemn was about to lie down when Snape unexpectedly appeared. Get dressed, the headmaster wants to see you. Seeing Solemn staring blankly, Snape repeated. Solemn came to his senses, Dumbledore wants to see me. Now. Solemn took a deep breath, he knew what was due would come sooner or later. He was already mentally prepared for this. Professor, wait a minute, I'll get something. Solemn knew that sooner or later Dumbledore would find him. Solemn didn't believe that Dumbledore wouldn't notice Filch's affairs, and it was more important for Dumbledore to make sure Solemn would have no effect on his plans. Solemn was fundamentally different from most of the other students at Hogwarts. Solemn also didn't believe that Dumbledore would not investigate him. In terms of Dumbledore's status, there was probably nothing that Solemn could hide from him, no matter what he did in Skull, or the Black Glove Duel, or in the Hogwarts, every move might not be hidden from the headmaster. Solemn took a few things from the box and followed Snape out of the common room obediently. Professor, I've got the stuff, how about we start as soon as the term is over? There were no portraits hanging in the corridor outside the Slytherin common room, and Solemn wasn't worried about being heard. And Solemn felt that it was too stupid to just follow along without saying a word. Don't talk here. Snape stopped Solemn. Follow me honestly, don't talk nonsense. There's no need to be so nervous, Professor. Solemn took 2 quick steps, side by side with Snape. Because of this matter, Principal Dumbledore must know. Without waiting for Snape to speak, Solemn continued, because that item is a very special item, and there are some stories about it that Headmaster Dumbledore would like to know. For the rest of the ride, no matter what Solemn said, Snape stopped talking. It was very boring for Solemn, but Solemn could imagine Snape's mood now. Seeing that he was about to meet the woman he loved, it was inevitable that his mood would be agitated. Solemn reckoned that when Snape lay in bed, he thought about the scene of meeting Lily Evans. What should he say first, and what Lily's reaction would be? To be honest, Solemn has been to the 8th floor, but it was to see the legendary Room of Requirement. It was the first time for Solemn to visit the corridor outside the principal. But like women's clothing, there are only 0 and countless times. Solemn thinks he might come to this place more often in the future. It has to be said that the Hogwarts headmaster's room planning is a bit messy, but it seems that most wizards' rooms are like this. Unlike muggles, wizards just wave their wands when they want to find something, instead of rummaging around like muggles. Solemn thought he had discovered the root cause of the clutter in wizards' rooms. After going down the spiral staircase with Snape and walking through the gleaming oak door, Solemn sort of got a glimpse of the headmaster's office. A large, bright, circular room filled with funny little sounds. On the slender-legged table were many strange silverware, whirling and puffing out little puffs of smoke. The walls were covered with portraits of old headmasters and headmasters, but now they were all pretending to sleep with their eyes closed, sneaking glances at Solemn from time to time, which Solemn had already noticed. There was also a huge table with claw-shaped legs. On top of a tall bookshelf against the wall was the school's sorting hat. It looked much cleaner now. A glass case next to it contained the sword of Gryffindor, and a black chest opposite the glass case, Solemn knew, contained the pensieve. Fawkes, Dumbledore's phoenix, was perched on a tall gilded perch behind the desk. Solemn was turning his head back and forth, looking around at the furnishings and items in the principal's office. Dumbledore, on the other hand, sat behind his desk, eyeing Solemn firmly through his glasses. Snape consciously stood against the wall as soon as he came in, trying to blend himself with the wall. After a general inspection, Solemn finally shifted his gaze to Dumbledore's body, not the eyes, so he wouldn't be foolish enough to look into the eyes of a legilimency master. That's no different than stripping yourself naked on the street. Dumbledore saw that Solemn finally turned his attention to himself, put his hand in and said, I think you must be very puzzled. Why did I ask your headmaster to bring you to see me at such a late hour? Solemn shook his head. To be honest, Principal, I really have no doubts. I know you will find me sooner or later. I thought you would find me after the Halloween incident, but you didn't. Solemn originally thought that Dumbledore would find time to meet him after the troll incident. Maybe Dumbledore was too busy, maybe Dumbledore thought it was too late, or maybe Dumbledore thought it was necessary to observe Solemn more. In short, the relationship between the two of them, the meeting has been delayed until now. Oh, then, you might as well guess why I'm looking for you. Dumbledore asked with great interest. In Solemn's peripheral vision, Dumbledore's glasses were reflecting light, making it difficult to see his eyes clearly. Filch. Halloween. Potter. Or the Philosopher's Stone. Solemn shrugged. Or both. Or are they interested in me? You'd better not be interested in me. Solemn complained in his heart. Although I'm not interested in these young girls in school who haven't grown up yet, my orientation is still normal. You still know about the Sorcerer's Stone. Can you tell me how you know? Dumbledore's expression made it impossible to see what he was thinking. TCH, I know that there is a Philosopher's Stone in school, can I hide it from you? Principal, let's stop talking around the bush and talk about it. It's getting late, so Professor Snape and I can go back to rest. Solemn didn't want to hang around with an old man like Dumbledore, that would kill a lot of brain cells. Young man, I'm really impatient. Anyway, it's really ill-considered to ask you to come and talk to a bad old man like me so late. Principal, I have no ill intentions towards Potter, nor do I have any thoughts about the Sorcerer's Stone. As for Filch's matter, I must have told you, the Dean, and you must not have taken the Halloween matter to heart. Solemn paused, then he said, then it can only be the principal. You want to take a look and judge whether I will have any impact on your plan, and then you can take corresponding measures, right? Dumbledore lowered his head slightly, looking directly over his glasses at Solemn firmly. It seems that Schuyler's life can indeed make people mature. Dumbledore said something out of nowhere. But Solemn could hear what Dumbledore was trying to say. Compared with the students of Schuyler, most of the students of Hogwarts are like fools, squandering precious time and wasting their talents recklessly. Few students can be strict with themselves and study eagerly knowledge to improve yourself. There is nothing to be harsh about this. After all, the goals and positioning of the two schools are different. Hogwarts teaches students how to control their magic and how to become a wizard. And Schuyler is much crueler, teaching you how to fight and how to kill. They are fundamentally different. If Hogwarts also adopts Schuyler's teaching method, I believe that Hogwarts now is another scene. But Solemn, can you tell me what you think of the Philosopher's Stone? Here comes the temptation to begin. Solemn knew that Dumbledore would not be fooled by himself with just a few words, and a great wizard like Dumbledore, they would not need legilimency to know if a person was lying, and Solemn really didn't care about the Philosopher's Stone, according to honestly just fine. I don't have any idea about the Philosopher's Stone. I'm not Harry Potter, and I'm not an ordinary wizard. I know a lot more than them. I know what can be touched and what can't be touched. So, Principal, there's no need to use the Philosopher's Stone to test me. Although Solemn is an illegitimate child, thanks to Elrond, the things he can touch are not much different from those of direct family members. Also, the Philosopher's Stone that you made, Principal, shouldn't be complete, right? It should be the kind that will fail after 1 or 2 uses. Solemn said. Oh, you know that too. Dumbledore's face was still expressionless. I said, I'm not an ordinary wizard. I know more things. Is this normal? Besides, every Sorcerer's Stone has to pass through the Presbyterian Council. If Mr. Flammel really gave you a complete Sorcerer's Stone, it must be you won't take it, the principal, right? Dumbledore didn't speak. The principal came to me today just to make sure that I will not have a bad influence on your plan. I can give you an accurate answer right now, no. With that said, Solemn stepped forward, took out something from his body and put it on Dumbledore's desk. Riddle is not dead. Ordinary wizards don't know about this, but you must know it, Headmaster, and you have guessed about it, right? It's just that there is no definite proof, so I will give you a proof. Solemn pointed to the things on the desk and said, during this Christmas holiday, I got this thing with my grandfather. Of course, the curse on it has been lifted by my grandfather, but a great wizard like you should still be able to see it. Are there any traces? Dumbledore's eyes sharpened. He didn't touch it directly, but looked at it carefully. My grandfather has researched it, and he didn't destroy this Horcrux, so the function of this ring as a Horcrux is still preserved. It's not that we can't destroy this Horcrux, but we can't guarantee that after destroying it, the other functions of the ring are intact. Yes, I've seen this ring. Dumbledore saw the Peverell logo on the ring, and he knew that this ring was the one worn by his student, Tom Riddle. He could also feel that there was an instant death curse on this ring. Even if he was cursed, he could not escape the instant death curse. Dumbledore raised his head and asked, where did you find it? He unconsciously used legilimency on Solemn. Solemn felt it, turned his head extremely dissatisfied and said, Principal. I have already shown my sincerity. If you do this again, I will turn around and leave. Although Dumbledore still couldn't be seen from his expression, the surprise still flashed in his eyes. His legilimency is already at its peak. Although Dumbledore admits that Solemn is indeed excellent, compared with his peers, he should not be aware of his legilimency. It seems that what he sees in front of him is there are many good things about this student. Solemn has an alchemy item on his body that can warn the wearer when he is receiving legilimency. This is what Solemn asked Elrond to get. But this item is only a warning, it can't stop others from legilimency. I apologize to you, Solemn, you know, when people get old, many habits are difficult to change. Dumbledore expressed his apology to Solemn. Professor, are you usually like this? Solemn turned his head to look at Snape by the wall. From the moment he entered the door, Snape had been leaning against the wall, trying to make himself appear non-existent. Snape ignored Solemn. Do you know what this is, Solemn? Dumbledore asked Solemn a knowing question. Horcrux, that's how Riddle escaped death. My grandfather and I found it at Gaunt's old house in Little Hangleton. That's right, Horcruxes. Dumbledore glanced at Solemn. Although I guessed that Tom made Horcruxes, I just couldn't find any evidence to prove it. Dumbledore stood up. For this reason, I would like to thank you, Solemn, for helping me confirm my guess. Then why don't you come up with something good to reward me? Can you give me some dry goods? Few people know that Tom and the Gaunt family are relatives, but obviously, he has no secrets in your eyes. Tom was once the most gifted student I ever taught. It's a pity that he wasted his talent in other places, and he went the wrong way. I always wondered if I had guided him more, would he have taken a completely different path? The way. Dumbledore has always been very guilty about Voldemort's affairs. He always thinks that he, as a teacher, did not guide well and did not play the role a teacher should have, which led to the birth of Voldemort. But is this really the case? In Solim's opinion, the teaching level of Hogwarts is not bad. Although the professors have reservations and don't teach the students everything, it is understandable. You ask a doctoral tutor in the mathematics department to teach 4 arithmetic operations in elementary schools, and it is the same, which does not reflect any level at all. Because these students are at this age, they need time to consolidate and accumulate what they have learned. Blindly instilling knowledge will only teach a bunch of theorists and a bunch of academic wizards. But if you want to be a good wizard, it is not enough to only have theory. Wizards pay more attention to practice. What's the use of you explaining the theory and method of using a spell well, but stopping when it's time to cast the spell? In Solim's view, the biggest problem with Hogwarts is not the level of teaching, but Hogwarts does not set a goal for students. In Skylar, the students all know what they will face in the future, know the suffering they have suffered, and the reason for the torture they have suffered. They all know what their goals are and the meaning of their existence. But Hogwarts is different. It only teaches students magic, and does not help students establish their outlook on life and values. To put it bluntly, Hogwarts has no ideological and moral classes. How to guide students on the right path, how to be a decent wizard, how to strengthen students' ideological construction, none of these. Wouldn't it be foreseeable that there would be some crooked wizards who would go on evil paths? Especially in Slytherin, where most of the little wizards are pure blood. They have been exposed to extreme pure blood theory very early, and the school will not correct their thinking and correct their attitudes. It's not bad that there has only been one wizard like Voldemort in so many years. Dumbledore fell into deep thought after hearing Solim's words. Indeed, as you said, the school is not doing enough to guide students on the right path. Dumbledore said heavily. Not enough. It's not okay at all. Now that you've noticed the problem, do you have any solutions? Dumbledore looked at Solemn. Obviously we were talking about Horcruxes just now, why did the topic go astray to the students' ideological construction? Is it possible that they should go to see Malzahn and Ma Jay? What a joke, this kind of thing should be something you principals, deans, and professors should worry about, why are you asking me? Isn't the topic a bit off topic? Principal, we are obviously talking about the very serious matter of Horcruxes, can we not go off topic? It's so late, who wants to go on and on here? Solemn just heard Snape yawned. How to guide students on the right path is also a serious topic. Dumbledore paused, however, compared to things more like Horcruxes, we can indeed put them down first. Dumbledore sat back in his high-backed chair, put his hands together and said, "Can I ask you something, Solemn?" Seeing that Solemn didn't speak, Dumbledore continued, "Since you already know about the Philosopher's Stone, can you help Harry at the right time? If you mean helping them with breakout games, Principal, I can accept that," Solemn added, "but I don't do free work. Both Dumbledore and Solemn knew very well that the Philosopher's Stone could never be stolen. Taking a step back, even if the Philosopher's Stone was really stolen, Dumbledore would of course face pressure from the Council of Elders, but the bigger trouble was directed at the wizard who stole the Philosopher's Stone. If you dare to play the Philosopher's Stone, you must be prepared to face the Presbyterian Action Team. This is much more exciting than meeting Death Eaters chasing and killing. Since the Sorcerer's Stone will basically not be stolen, there is no need to worry too much about the design of the level. As long as the first level and the last level are closed, the snacks are enough. The first level is to prevent the students from entering, mainly to block the footsteps of Gryffindor's gang of troublemakers. The middle level can be done casually. The key is the last level. Just make sure the Philosopher's Stone doesn't fall into the wrong hands. And Dumbledore also has the mind of exercising Harry Potter in it. So these levels are not designed to be too difficult. In other words, this is the level designed for Harry Potter. I don't have any particular thoughts about that savior. To be honest, I think it's right to keep a proper distance between us. I don't want to get involved in Harry Potter's affairs at will, but for your request, Headmaster, I think we still have some places where we can cooperate. Principal, you must have investigated everything about me. You also know what I have done and what kind of trouble those things will cause me. You can let me come to Hogwarts, I thank you. The message contained in the ring is my thank you. By the way, I will use this ring in a while, and I will return it to my grandfather after I use it up. Solemn said this to remind Dumbledore that I will return it myself. Shit, there are people outside of school who want to deal with me. Keeping a distance from Potter is the right thing to do. Besides, don't lose the Resurrection Stone. I will take it back when the time comes. Now this ring is still a Horcrux. Although Elrond has dealt with it so that it cannot confuse wizards who approach it, it is still very dangerous. Also, can you tell me that you want to use this? What is the ring for? Dumbledore frowned when he heard that Solemn was going to use the ring. The topic about Potter just now has been taken awry again. The ring of the Gaunt family is the Resurrection Stone. As long as it is used correctly, the soul or consciousness of the dead can be recalled. Seeing what Dumbledore wanted to say, Solemn waved his hand and continued, use it correctly, Principal. If you don't know how to use it correctly, then the ring only summons the person in the user's memory. It looks real, but it's actually an illusion. He turned his head and glanced at Snape, who was still a wooden figure by the wall. Solemn said, I promised Professor Snape that he would meet Evans. Dumbledore thought for a while and said, so, the potion that Severus prepared is actually for your sister, right? Argus is just an experimental product. Snape brewed the potion, maybe Dumbledore didn't know. But Dumbledore must have noticed Filch's changes. A great wizard like Dumbledore is extremely sensitive to magic. By the way, Principal, can the school provide Mr. Filch with the follow-up potion? He has already come to me. Dumbledore was left to settle the matter of Filch. Anyway, it will be Hogwarts who pays, Snape will suffer, and Solemn will sell Filch a favor, which is great. As for whether Dumbledore would leave Filch alone, Solemn hadn't considered this issue, and Dumbledore could have solved Filch's problem by simply taking a few bucks out of the funds allocated by the board of directors. Anyway, he has to do something with the funds every year, and Dumbledore must be very familiar with this business. Seeing that Dumbledore didn't speak, Solemn took it for granted. As for the matter you asked me to help Potter, Headmaster, I can help, but as I said just now, I won't work for nothing. Oh. Then what do you want? Solemn said in his heart, I want more things. The tears of the phoenix, the blood of the phoenix, the feathers of the phoenix, the ashes of the phoenix after nirvana, I want them all. But is it possible? Transactions are all about equality. Can such a small favor for Potter be compared with the rare materials on those phoenixes? This is the same as when you did a mission to deliver a letter in Novice Village, and the mission reward was an orange outfit. Is it possible? So no matter how thick-skinned Solemn was, he couldn't brazenly ask Dumbledore for things from Phoenix. At that time, I will mention it to you, the principal. Don't worry, I won't embarrass you. Solemn said in his heart that he should let you owe it first. I'll tell you when I think it over. It looks like you have a pretty good idea who's behind the Sorcerer's Stone. May I think so? Dumbledore asked a question out of the blue. Solemn froze for a moment. He didn't expect Dumbledore to ask him such a question out of the blue. But he quickly reacted. Speaking of which, Headmaster, don't you want to save that brave wizard? Solemn asked Dumbledore back, or do you think it's unnecessary? Dumbledore really didn't expect Solemn to say that to him. There was something wrong with Quirrell, and this couldn't be hidden from Dumbledore at all. Don't forget, at the school dinner, the distance between them was only 2 or 3 people. After all, Snape could feel what was wrong with Quirrell, let alone Dumbledore. It seems that this matter has not been hidden from you from inside to outside, Solemn. This was the 3rd time that Dumbledore looked seriously at the student in front of him. To put it bluntly, I'm not one of those dumb Gryffindors. Only Gryffindors would think that our headmaster wanted to kill Potter. Solemn said something heart-rending. Look at all the idiots in Gryffindor, they believed someone was going to kill Potter in full view. Let's do it first, Principal, it's really getting late, I should go back. Tomorrow morning is Professor Flitwick's charms class. I don't want to be late for class. Solemn said I wanted to sleep. I think you and our headmaster still have something to say, so I'll go back by myself, don't worry, I won't run around. Solemn left without waiting for Dumbledore to express his opinion. It wasn't very polite, Solemn himself admitted, but he had just thought of a long-forgotten question that he urgently needed to go back and look up. Just when Dumbledore asked Solemn what he wanted, Solemn suddenly remembered one thing he had missed. Sometimes people are like this, and sometimes when they are talking, they suddenly think of something. Solemn too, for some reason, just at that moment, he suddenly remembered Neville's toad that disappeared on the train. The reason why he left so impolitely now is to go back and look at the Marauders map as soon as possible, to make sure that there is no strange name in the school. Although in Solemn's impression, the toad didn't seem to have any sense of existence, whether it was in the movie or in the novel, it was just a flash in the pan. But now Solemn wasn't sure that the toad was just a toad, at least until he caught it. Watching Solemn leave in a hurry, Dumbledore smiled, but didn't say anything. Instead, he turned to Snape and said, Severus, it seems your student has a lot of little secrets. Early the next morning, Solemn yawned with dark circles under his eyes as he walked towards the auditorium. He only slept for 3 hours. It's not that he doesn't have energy potions, but he knows that drinking too much of that kind of thing is not good, so don't drink it if you can. He had opened the Marauders map for hours upon his return from Dumbledore's. Carefully distinguishing each of the above names, Solemn did not see any strange names on the map. The Gryffindor lounge was the place he focused on. He even saw Peter Pettigrew in Harry and Ronald's bedroom, but Nawe was surrounded by no one but his 3 roommates. However, for skilled wizards, concealment spells and anti-tracking spells are compulsory courses. Just because it's not on the map doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The best way is to find the toad and see what the hell it is. The students walked into the auditorium one after another to prepare for breakfast. Solemn saw that Neville and the others were just there, so he went straight to Gryffindor's long table. My God, Solemn, didn't you sleep last night? You looked terrible. Hermione found that Solemn's mental state was very poor, and his whole body was sluggish. Leave that alone, Neville, come with me. Solemn called Neville aside, he didn't want others to know about it. Neville followed Solemn into an empty corridor outside the auditorium. Neville, I want to ask you something. Solemn didn't hesitate. Where is your toad, the one named Life that your uncle gave you? Neville froze for a moment. He hadn't thought that Solemn had called him here just to ask about it. But he told Solemn the truth. Neville's toad was indeed acting abnormally. Neville usually couldn't find it, every time Neville tried to find it, but the toad would automatically appear in Neville's sight after a while. Whenever Neville woke up, he couldn't see the toad, and according to Neville, every time the toad appeared, it would only appear after returning to the lounge at night. After listening to Neville's description, Solemn pondered for a while, and said to Neville, well, don't tell anyone about this matter, and you should write down the law of the disappearance of the toad. Is it because of you every time? It only shows up when it's about time to rest. Then Solemn added, you don't have to worry about that toad, treat it as you usually do. I have something to figure out first. Well, let's go back. While eating breakfast, Solemn kept thinking about the toad. Every time it disappears and appears, there is a rule to follow. It is basically invisible during the day, and it will appear when Neville and the others are about to rest at night. Where did it go when it disappeared? Solemn began to sort out all the information about the toad in his mind. It was a toad named Life, a present from Neville's uncle Argyle. What does this man Argyle do? Solemn knew that there were several Longbottoms working in some subordinate organizations of the Presbyterian Church, but Solemn didn't know the specific positions. He still needed to ask Elrond about this. If, as Solemn thought, that toad was a brilliant animagus, then it would definitely not be a good idea to contact him rashly. As for the last wizard who knew animagus, Solemn was sure that he would never have any chance. A wizard who can transform an animagus must be a master shapeshifter. Such a wizard, as long as he is not in animagus form, can transform Solemn into an animal by malicious transformation in a split second. Once this happens, Solemn is out of business. Of course, it is not certain whether the toad is an animagus or not, maybe it just has the blood of some magical creatures. Solemn may need to seek some professional advice. Luckily, Professor Kettleburn is still at Hogwarts, although he is retiring next year and will be replaced by Hagrid in his third year, but when it comes to magical creatures, Professor Kettleburn is the absolute authority. Silvanos Kettleburn, the name, is as much an authority on magical creatures as Newt Scamander. In terms of magical creatures, there is almost nothing he does not know and does not understand. Solemn believes that he knows more about magical creatures than Hagrid. If he goes to Professor Kettleburn himself, he should be able to get a definite answer. If the toad was only of special blood, then it would be fine. But if it's really an animagus infiltrating Hogwarts, Solemn needs to think long term. After all, Solemn knows nothing about this toad. This is not the characters and stories he is familiar with, so he needs to be more cautious. Solemn would be nervous about the toad, of course for a reason. Yes, Solemn was safe at Hogwarts, under Dumbledore's watch, but not absolutely safe. Hogwarts is just a school, and there are people who really want to come in from outside, and the school's protective measures will not be of much use. After all, everyone knew that this was Dumbledore's territory, and wizards who could break in and dare to break in under this premise were definitely not easy to deal with. A wizard who dares to illegally invade Hogwarts is definitely confident that he will not be discovered, or that he is confident that he can escape from a great wizard like Dumbledore, otherwise what would he do? Give away the head. There are very few wizards in the ordinary wizarding world who can meet this standard. If that toad was really a wizard with connections to the Presbyterian Church, what was his motivation for infiltrating Hogwarts? Spying on Dumbledore? Or is it just to keep the Philosopher's Stone from being stolen this year? Or want to do something at Hogwarts? If the wizard was a Presbyterian, what family was he from? Will it have something to do with the rich family? Will you attack yourself at the right time? Solemn felt that he was scaring himself, but Solemn did not dare to rule out the possibility. This kind of thing is not afraid of guessing wrong, but afraid of guessing right. If that toad is really a wizard, what should I do? Solemn doesn't know the animagus active spell, which is very, very off the beaten path. Its only function is to force an animagus to act, and it does nothing else. Learning now. Considering the difficulty of animagus's transformation, the difficulty of mastering this spell must not be too low. Solemn has no confidence in mastering it in a short time. Then he had to ask someone for help, and the first thing Solemn thought of was Snape. After all, Snape had something to ask of him, and Solemn believed that Snape would be interested in a wizard who might be breaking into the school. The crux of the matter now is how to catch the toad. If it is really a wizard, it will not be easy to catch him. Maybe something could be done with the food. That toad always wanted something to eat. Solemn skipped Cuthbert Binns' History of Magic in the afternoon after finishing the Charms class taught by Professor Flitwick and the Herb class taught by Professor Sprout in the morning. If you have time to linger in Cuthbert Binns' class, ask Kettleburn about toads. After all, Cuthbert Binns was a great example of scripting, and any student who could follow his class from beginning to end without getting sleepy was an animal. All Solemn knew was that Hermione could follow Cuthbert Binns' class from beginning to end without slacking off. There are two subjects in school that Solemn does not attend. One is flying lessons. There are no exams in flying lessons, and Solemn doesn't like riding a broom. Another one is the History of Magic by Cuthbert Binns. Cuthbert Binns is a ghost. He taught the history of magic when Hogwarts was established and has been teaching it until now. But his teaching method is to follow the script, and the students are doing other things in his class. Few of the students in history of magic would listen carefully, just like Solemn used to take the political exam, they only started rushing around the exam. After lunch, Solemn went to find Kettleburn near the Forbidden Forest. Solemn had inquired about it. He was going to teach the 5th graders in the afternoon. At this time, he should be preparing magical creatures. Solemn decided to visit Kettleburn before the afternoon class. Burn. The Forbidden Forest is located to the west of Hogwarts Castle and is a large, eerie forest. According to school regulations, students are not allowed to enter the Forbidden Forest. The Forbidden Forest is full of dense and tall trees, covering the entire sky. There are all kinds of dangerous monsters and magical creatures in the Forbidden Forest. It seems to be infinitely attractive to the students. No matter how many times the professors emphasize that they are not allowed to enter the Forbidden Forest, there will always be students who want to go into the Forbidden Forest to find out. The dangers of the Forbidden Forest are not something the younger students can handle. Here are the most dangerous plants in England: the dragon's claw vine and the hempthorn tree, of which the dragon's claw vine is the most dangerous. Its long, tangled, slimy vines are always ready to seek victims, and the dragon's claw vine digests an animal never leaving a trace. Its highly acidic mucus is strong enough to melt even bones as part of its nutrition. As for the thorn tree, it is its roots that are used to kill people. Its roots are people's nightmares. It senses the vibrations of the ground, so it breaks open the soil and pulls creatures under the soil to digest slowly. It digests an animal in the same way. Leave no trace. If a wizard without enough knowledge and vigilance walks into the Forbidden Forest alone, he probably won't come back. There are not only dangerous plants in the Forbidden Forest, but also dangerous monsters. The Acromantula is one of the most numerous. Originally, there was no such species in the Forbidden Forest, thanks to Hagrid, who released an Acromantula he raised into the Forbidden Forest when he was a student, and later found a companion for the male Acromantula. Well, the result is that alien species such as Acromantia are multiplying crazily in the Forbidden Forest. They occupy a fairly large area in the Forbidden Forest, except for stone and wood, the rest are on their recipes. Ever since the acromant spiders multiplied in the Forbidden Forest, the conflict between the centaurs and them has never stopped. After all, the centaurs are also on their diet. The centaur tribe in the Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts can be said to be the largest tribe in the entire kingdom of Ying, and these centaur people are quite hostile to wizards, but if you are a student, they are also called little ponies by the horse population. They will not harm you, but will send you out of the Forbidden Forest. But having said that, fortunately there is no environmental protection law in the wizarding world, otherwise Hagrid, who single-handedly caused the invasion of alien species and caused serious consequences, would be in big trouble. Acromantis is not a native species in the Forbidden Forest, and there is no agreement between them and Hogwarts not to interfere with each other. This means they can break out of the Forbidden Forest if they want to. They don't do this now. It's all because of the father of these Acromantulas, Aragog, the one that Hagrid raised, and it is restraining its own offspring, but when Aragog, what will happen after K dies is completely unknown. On the edge of the Forbidden Forest, not far from Hagrid's hut, Solemn saw Professor Kettleburn in the distance. Because he's so recognizable, just like Hagrid's tall stature, Kettleburn has features that are instantly recognizable. Professor Kettleburn has only one arm and one leg, and he wears 2 prosthetics. So you can easily recognize him from a distance. Kettleburn was a passionate and sometimes reckless man who loved the dangerous creatures he studied and cared for immensely, often causing harm to himself and sometimes to others. This fact resulted in no fewer than 62 detentions during his tenure. Like his successor Hagrid, he tended to underestimate the dangers in caring for creatures such as jays, grindylows, and fire crabs, and he once enchanted the ash snake to make it appear in the Fountain of Luck play. Playing the role of the worm, which ends up setting the Great Hall on fire, is such a famous accident that you even see it in Hogwarts, a history. Although a bit eccentric, Kettleburn was a lovely man, and his stay on the faculty proved that he was well liked by both teachers and students. The 2 sets of prosthetics on his body were sent by Dumbledore, but they looked very worn out, covered with scars and burn marks. Solemn saw Professor Kettleburn squatting on the ground and fiddling with something. Good afternoon, Professor. Solemn greeted first. Kettleburn heard movement behind him and glanced back. Oh, it's you, Solemn, come on, let me test you, do you know what these cuties are? Kettleburn straightened up and moved away. Only then did Solemn see several cages on the ground. After taking a look, Solemn knew what these were. They should be the magical creatures that will be used in class in the afternoon. It's Mortla, Professor. Then Solemn added, I don't want to be bitten by that. Motra rats are animals that look like mice but have anemone-like growths on their backs. This creature can be found in the coastal areas of the UK. People bitten by Motra rats will experience retching symptoms, but in more severe cases, the patient's chrysanthemum will also emit sparks, but this lasts for up to 48 hours. The growths on the back of the Motra rat can be pickled and eaten to increase resistance to curses, but excessive consumption can also make people grow unsightly purple ear hair. Motra rat juice has healing properties for cuts and scrapes and can also relieve pain. Haha, you are right, if you are bitten by this little guy, if it is serious, you can only bear your butt. Kettleburn said with a smile. By the way, is there something for you to come to see me now? Kettleburn just remembered that Solemn probably has something to come to see him now. Professor, it's like this, my cousin, Neville, he has a toad, but that toad always disappears inexplicably. Even in a closed environment like a train compartment, the toad can disappear. I just want to ask, is this toad possibly a hybrid? Solemn briefly explained the problem. Kettleburn scratched his face with his good hand. Toad disappeared. How did it disappear? Is it like a ball-flying bird? Or is it like an invisible beast? Fortunately, Solemn has some understanding of magical creatures, otherwise he really wouldn't understand what Kettleburn's example meant. The ball chases the bird, which is the name of the wizard. Muggles call it the dodo. It is a chocobo that can't fly but can move instantly, but because Muggles don't know the teleportation ability of the ball-stalking bird, they think they have made this bird extinct. Orbs disappear suddenly because they teleport, not invisibility. But invisible beasts are really invisible. The secret of invisible beasts' invisibility lies in their fur. It is for this reason that invisible beasts have been hunted and killed in large numbers, because their fur is the material for making invisibility cloaks. I don't know, because we don't know when the toad disappeared. Every time Neville tried to find it, he couldn't find it, but after a while, the toad would automatically appear in front of him. Solemn added to, and every time the toad appears after Neville returns to the common room, when he is about to rest, it is usually invisible. Oh, could it be that Neville was too careless to find it? You know, that kid Neville. Kettleburn shook his head as soon as he mentioned Neville. No, Professor, in the compartment on the train when term started, the door was closed and the windows were closed, but the toad disappeared from under my nose, Hermione's, Neville's, the entire compartment. I couldn't find it on the train, but before the sorting, the toad appeared beside Neville on its own initiative. A lot of people have seen this incident. Neville even interrupted Professor McGonagall's speech in order to pick up the toad. Solemn said everything about the toad. Kettleburn frowned. This is very unusual, Solemn, very unusual. So I'm going to ask the professor, is it possible that the toad has some unusual abilities because of its special blood? For example, the offspring of hybrids with some magical creatures with invisibility. Solemn said. It is unlikely. If a new magical creature is bred through hybridization, it must be filed with the Ministry of Magic. If there is no record, then this behavior will be illegal. But this year, the Department of Magical Creature Management and Control of the Ministry of Magic has only there are 2 records of new species, but you say that this toad was given to him by Neville's uncle, which is even more unreasonable. It is really a kind of illegal breeding of a new species to give to one's younger generation as a pet. Extremely irresponsible. Kettleburn told Solemn his opinion. Indeed, as Kettleburn said, if it is really a toad of special blood, then it must be a hybrid, but Kettleburn has never heard of such a species. Even if it was bred illegally and Kettleburn didn't know about it, how likely is it that the elders gave the younger an illegal species that could bring danger and trouble? After listening to Kettleburn's words, Solemn felt that the matter about the toad was certain. The savior Harry Potter has been a little restless these days. During the Christmas vacation, He was wandering around the school wearing the invisibility cloak that he didn't know who gave him, and found a magical mirror. In the mirror, he saw his dead parents smiling at him, but when the first time he went to see his parents in the mirror, he was discovered by Principal Dumbledore. The principal said on the spot, "The child stays up in the middle of the night and runs around. I will put the mirror somewhere else tomorrow." This was the first time Harry had seen his parents in person, the pictures didn't count. This had a great impact on Harry. Seeing them, Harry couldn't help but think of that night, the night that influenced the history of the wizarding world, and the night he lost his parents. But Harry thinks that Headmaster Dumbledore is right, it's no good to indulge in vain dreams and forget about real life. But Harry soon lost the energy to care about the mirror, because the Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff was about to start, and Wood, their captain, wanted to wring out all the time for training like a towel. Harry spent almost all of his spare time on a broom. But hard work always paid off, and in the match against Hufflepuff, it only took him 5 minutes to catch the snitch, right under Snape's nose. Harry wanted to laugh at the thought of Snape's face contorted with anger. He soon stopped laughing, though, when after the match he spotted Snape and Quirrell walking into the Forbidden Forest. He followed curiously. Then Harry discovered a big secret. Snape and Quirrell hid in a place like the Forbidden Forest not to do something shameful, but Snape was threatening Quirrell, and Snape asked Quirrell how to get through the big dog. Harry's happy mood of just winning the Quidditch match was instantly shattered, like a bucket of cold water being poured from head to toe. When Harry returned to the castle, the people of Gryffindor were still celebrating. Harry called Ronald and Hermione into an empty classroom. After repeatedly confirming that Peeves was not here, Harry closed the door and told the two of his discoveries. Before Hermione could speak, Ronald spoke first. "We already know that Old Bat is not a good thing. He is the only one in school who has the idea of hitting the Philosopher's Stone. Didn't you say last time, Harry, that his leg was shot by that bat? Did the big dog bite? That's the proof. He's trying to get through that trapdoor to steal the Philosopher's Stone, and we should expose the old bat now." After finishing speaking, Ronald gave Hermione a sideways glance, and said, "Actually, Harry, you can discuss this kind of matter with me alone. There is no need to call her here. She has a good relationship with Slytherin. If she goes to Slytherin to call that what about Selwyn's snitch?" Harry knew it was going to be bad as soon as he heard it. Sure enough, when Hermione was still thinking about who was more problematic, Snape or Quirrell, when she heard Ronald's ambiguous words, she sternly said, "Okay, I'll go, you two go play by yourself. I don't know who said looking for information about Nicholas May, but you didn't even persist in the library all afternoon, you'll just be lazy. You'll only talk big. Don't look for me in the future." After saying that, Hermione slammed the door shut with red eyes. Harry looked at his good buddy speechlessly. "You d her off, did you forget about Halloween?" On Halloween, Ronald ridiculed Hermione for having no friends. If it weren't for Solemn, Hermione would probably be beaten to death by a troll in the women's bathroom. After hearing Harry's words, Ronald opened his mouth and said, "Harry, she and Slytherin are too close, we can't take any chances. The best way is for the two of us to find a way to expose Snape's conspiracy. Then what do you say? Tell the professors. Will the professors believe us?" Harry suddenly felt that Ronald seemed unreliable. "Should we just do nothing? Just watch Snape steal the Philosopher's Stone?" Ronald said hastily, "Harry, now only we know that Snape wants to steal the Philosopher's Stone, and we have to stop him. We're going to expose Snape to Professor McGonagall, and then—" Harry interrupted Ronald before he could finish his sentence. "I know you don't like Slytherins, but you have to admit that Solemn is right." Harry looked at Ronald and said, "Professors won't believe the words of two little wizards, and students shouldn't know about the Philosopher's Stone. About the matter, if the professor asks, what shall we say?" "TCH, Ronald snorted dissatisfiedly, "we haven't tried it, so how do we know it won't work? Besides, can Slytherin believe it? Even if the professors don't believe it, is there nothing we can do?" Ronald leaned closer to Harry and whispered, "If the professors don't believe us, we can steal the Philosopher's Stone first, so that Snape can't get his way." Harry's eyes widened, and he said in disbelief, "Are you crazy? Let's not talk about whether we can do it or not, just talk about that big dog, how do we get through?" Snape was bitten by it. Do you think we can get away with it? Get through that trapdoor unscathed? I've thought about it. That big dog belongs to Hagrid. He must know how to subdue it. Let's talk to Hagrid. Seeing that Harry was still hesitating, Ronald continued, we must get the Philosopher's Stone before Snape, Harry, or it will be too late. Not to mention Harry and Ronald's foolish plan, Hermione walked quietly in the secluded corridor alone with red eyes. She didn't want to go back to the Gryffindor lounge now, where the Gryffindor students were celebrating the Quidditch match. Hermione felt that her current mood did not match there, and she just wanted to find a quiet corner by herself and stay alone for a while. Maybe Solemn is right and Gryffindor isn't for him, Hermione thought. Hermione wasn't too fond of the constant chaos in the Gryffindor lounge, but it was bearable. Gryffindor students are always getting deducted points for getting into trouble, and losing all the points they have worked so hard to earn in class, which is also bearable. The big deal is that I try harder to score from the professor. However, Hermione never fit into the Gryffindor environment. She has heard people say behind her back more than once that she likes to show off and stand out. The irony is that those who like to chew their tongues behind their backs are often the ones who like to cause trouble and talk loudly in public. This kind of behavior is not a kind of showing off, but in a different way. Before she knew it, Hermione walked into the small classroom they used to come to. After a moment's hesitation, Hermione touched the doorknob on the portrait, opened the door and walked in. Huh. Hermione, why are you here at this hour? Solemn saw Hermione, and he knew that Hermione was usually in the library at this time of day. Then Solemn noticed Hermione's red eye sockets. Frowning, Solemn said, sit down, can you tell me what happened? Hermione thought for a while, then just told Solemn Harry about finding out that Snape was threatening Quirrell. These are not big problems. The Philosopher's Stone is very safe, that is, those two who can't use their brains like to think about it. It seems that the world won't turn around without them. Solemn said disdainfully. He really didn't like Ronald. Harry was a bit better and had a bit of a brain. But Ronald is a completely emotional person, and he likes to be smart and often leads himself into the ditch. Needless to say, Solemn pointed to Hermione's red eye sockets, this is Weasley's masterpiece. Weasley. What's wrong with that idiot? A voice came from the professor next door. Excited as soon as I heard Weasley, who else could it be? Draco and Neville came from the next door. I just heard you guys talking about Weasley, what's wrong with him? Draco still had his wand in his hand, he had just contacted Neville next door to cast a spell. Go back and practice your spells. Solemn ignored the excited Draco, and continued to say to Hermione, I have one thing to ask you. That toad named Raffle is Neville's pet. You saw it on the train. How do you talk about the toad? Shouldn't this situation comfort girls? Hermione was a little helpless. I think there is something wrong with that toad, please help me pay attention. Solemn said to Hermione seriously. When did it appear and when did it disappear? If possible, it's best to know the whereabouts of that toad. You know, I can't enter the Gryffindor's lounge. Is there something wrong with that toad? Hermione felt that Solemn would not make a fuss, and there must be something wrong with him discussing a toad with himself so seriously. Solemn leaned closer to Hermione and whispered, I suspect that Toad is an animagus who sneaked into the school. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.